Chapter 62. Chapter 62. To accidentally expose a love affair. Jiang Susu extended her leg to trip Jiang Ruan. Seemingly not noticing anything, Jiang Ruan continued to get up, but inadvertently leaned to one side and managed to avoid Jiang Susu's leg in the process. However, with this movement she accidentally collided with Zhang Li, who was standing to one side. Unable to avoid the impact, Zhang Li staggered forward a few steps and just happened to bump into Jiang Susu. Jiang Susu had no time to react, and immediately fell head first off the boat. At the same time, Jiang Ruan let out a startled exclamation and swiftly grabbed hold of Zhang Li, who was on the verge of following Jiang Susu into the river. There was the sound of a splash and Jiang Susu vanished from sight. Jiang Ruan asked Zhang Li, who was still in a state of shock, "Is third younger sister all right?" Zhang Li shook her head. "How did I lose my balance just now?" There were so many people on the boat, and she had had her back towards Jiang Ruan. Naturally, she did not know who had bumped into her. A sudden realization struck Jiang Ruan and she called out loudly, "Help, second younger sister has fallen into the river." On hearing her in rapid succession, the people turned to look at the river. There was a figure bobbing up and down in the midst of the undulating waves, and it was indeed Jiang Susu. She was totally soaked, and water kept filling her nose and mouth. Throwing decorum to the winds, she yelled, "Save me!" There was no shortage of young noblemen on board the Qing Song boat who could swim. Upon witnessing a beautiful damsel in distress, they were all eager to take action. But if they really did rescue Jiang Susu from her watery predicament, it would be tantamount to sullying her innocence, and they would definitely have to marry her thereafter. However, Minister Jiang was currently at the peak of his career, and Xia Yan's family was also on the rise. If the young man was not considered to be a good match, Minister Jiang would not be willing to marry off his daughter in this way, and so it was not certain that this would be a done deal. It was perhaps with this in mind that some of the more thoughtful young noblemen simply stood back on the deck and watched. But what sort of person was Jiang Susu? She was the capital's most talented young lady, and had been acknowledged as the capital's most beautiful lady for many years. Naturally, some son of the upper class whose social status matched with Jiang Susu's, and who treated her with adoring devotion, would not be able to stand by idly and watch the failing strength of this belle. He would take on the mantle of the hero and jump in to rescue her. Thus, it was at this time that a piu dong was heard after someone from the opposite side jumped into the water out of the blue. He appeared to be an excellent swimmer and reached Jiang Susu's side in no time. With one arm holding her up, he pulled her along as he swam to the boat. Pu dong. Onomatopoeic sound for something jumping or falling into water. Louder than a splash. Jiang Ruan first joined the others in helping to pull Jiang Susu onto the boat. As she had struggled in the water for quite some time, she was rather dazed and only half conscious. After she was safely pulled onto the deck, everyone trained their sights on the young man who had rescued her. He was 17 or 18 years old, with tanned skin and an upright demeanor. It was his eyes, however, that hinted at a hidden understanding. Jiang Ruan stayed by Jiang Susu's side. In a mild tone she said to him, "Noble sir, many thanks for saving Miss Zhang's life. When we return tonight, the Zhang family will definitely show you our gratitude with gifts." Gongzi, son of an official/son of nobility. The young man replied rather impetuously, "Why would I want your gifts? Quickly check and see if she's all right." After saying this, he made as if to stride forward. Of course, his actions gave rise to incessant speculation. For a moment, everyone looked at the young man with probing eyes. Someone on the Qing Song boat could not hold back any longer and burst out with the question, "Who are you?" Jiang Ruan frowned and once again blocked his way by staying in front of Jiang Susu. Unflinchingly she said, "Noble sir, your kindness in saving Miss Zhang will always be engraved in the Zhang family's hearts. However, Miss Zhang is a young lady who is yet to be married. For you to come so close to her is a breach of propriety." Jiang Ruan was solely thinking about Jiang Susu's welfare, as she had the bigger picture in mind, and her words were appropriate and elegantly worded. All the onlookers nodded in approval. The dark-skinned youth said impatiently, "She and I are in perfect harmony with each other. What nonsense is this about being too close? In future I will definitely marry her." Jiang Ruan smiled sweetly, but her voice was entirely frosty. What is noble sir saying? I respect noble sir's ability to act heroically for a just cause, but your actions are giving me cause for unease. Miss Jiang has always shunned immoral and evil influences, and her talent is outstanding. Moreover, she has never uttered an unpleasant word. I fear that noble sir will find it difficult to match her. You must know that not just anyone can marry the Jiang Fu's daughters. She was not in the least cowed by this robust young man. In truth, from the time this dark-skinned young man had spoken such words, no one on the boat believed him. Jiang Susu was in a class by herself, above even the crème de la crème. Whether in public or in private, there was no way she would take a second look at such a boorish fellow. During this time, Jiang Susu was lying flat on the deck, listening groggily to the words of the people around her, with no idea about what was happening. The dark-skinned youth showed his annoyance. In a fury, he grasped an embroidered handkerchief hanging from his waist and shook it out in the face of the onlookers. If you don't believe me, then see for yourself. This is the handkerchief she gave me. I, Zhoda, have been in the capital for so many years. How can I possibly be lying? The handkerchief fluttered in front of everyone. The upper corner was embroidered with orchids, which seemed to exude a faint fragrance. In the lower left corner, the character for Su was embroidered delicately in silver silk thread. Jiang Susu's personal maid, Hu Dai, stood in shocked silence with her mouth agape. She exchanged a glance with Qing Ting, and they saw the alarm in each other's eyes. Everyone had gone quiet. Although there was no way Jiang Susu and this Zhoda could be together, it was inevitable that such a beauty could make occasional mistakes. In addition, at the present time, Jiang Susu was still young, and it was possible that she had been deliberately seduced. In the face of such evidence, the crowd started to waver. Jiang Ruan intoned furiously, "How much weight can you place on one handkerchief? It's not possible to ascertain what method you used to steal Miss Jiang's handkerchief." Hu Dai never imagined that Jiang Ruan would speak on behalf of Jiang Susu. At that point in time, uncaring of the consequences, she immediately added on to Jiang Ruan's words and said, "It's true, our young lady's handkerchief went missing a few days ago, and we have not been able to find it. So it was you who stole it." Zhoda was only human. On seeing this scene unfold before him, he flushed and said angrily, "She is a young lady from the house of a government official, and I am but a commoner. How on earth would I be able to steal her handkerchief? Is it possible that a young lady from an official's household would be mingling with the crowds like a commoner, waiting for her handkerchief, such a personal item, to be stolen by me?" Jiang Ruan smiled faintly. This Zhoda really did not disappoint her. His ability to adapt and respond was superb. What a pity for Xia Yan that this young man whom she had taken so much trouble to find was now dealing with her own daughter. She could not imagine the expression on Xia Yan's face when this news got back to the Jiang Fu. Zhoda continued, "If you don't believe me, look at her waist. You will find a green jade piece. That's my family heirloom which I've given to her as a token." On hearing this, Qing Ting gave a sigh of relief. "Our young miss has no such jade piece. What nonsense are you spouting?" Princess Rongya, who had been standing by the sidelines watching the situation unfold, rolled her eyes and walked to Jiang Susu's side. With an expression of grave concern, she said, "Why don't I check? Since Miss Jiang is innocent, let's prove it. So this foul thief who is attempting to besmirch Miss Jiang's reputation has nothing to say." Hu Dai was about to stretch out a hand to stop her, but Princess Rongya had already reached for Jiang Susu's waist. Jiang Ruan's eyebrows were slightly raised and her eyes momentarily gleamed as she pondered the situation. She had not expected that Princess Rongya would take action, but it certainly simplified matters for her. The onlookers were looking with curiosity at Princess Rongya, while Hu Dai nervously squeezed her hands together. After quite a while, Princess Rongya looked up with a strange expression on her face. She lifted her hand. Swinging from the tips of her exquisitely white fingertips was a string of green jade beads. Everyone was silent. The eyes looking at Jiang Susu had, in an instant, become pregnant with meaning. Jiang Ruan lowered her head slightly. See, no matter how much time passed, the ways of this world and that of the past were exactly the same. Rumor and suspicion, malice and slander. It's just that, this time, the person experiencing it is Jiang Susu herself. Chapter 63. Chapter 63. Help from a nobleman. In the midst of the silence, Jiang Susu coughed a few times and slowly awakened. Seeing how everyone was glancing at her with an inscrutable meaning, she looked down at her dripping wet body and her heart began to pound. Jiang Li rejoiced in her misfortune. It's great that second elder sister is awake. What happened? Jiang Susu rubbed her forehead. At the moment, her white dress was completely soaked and clung tightly to her elegant curves. Her long hair was pasted to her clothes. Her unadorned small face looked like a lotus flower, making people who looked at her feel pity. But at the thought of the dark-skinned youth, people's original pity immediately turned into contempt. Jiang Susu, with her keen perception, became aware of people's different attitudes towards her. Jiang Dan, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. Second elder sister, how could you have a secret affair? Also gifting your personal token to others? Won't it be embarrassing once father finds out about it? What did you say? Jiang Susu was shocked and her voice unconsciously raised. Who has had a secret affair with another? Jiang Dan took a step back, frightened. It's backed by solid evidence. Nonsense. Jiang Susu was in a panic. From the moment she woke up, she knew something was wrong. It was Zhang Ruan who was supposed to fall in the water, but in the end, she herself fell in. The plan had gone awry. It was all messed up. What should she do now? In her impatience to refute, her voice became shrill. The usual composed and dignified conduct of an influential family's young lady disappeared. Looking at Jiang Dan's very frightened look, a suspicion was born in everyone's hearts. This was the way things were in the world. When she was seen as a fairy, everything naturally looked good. However, once her image was stained, in an instant, she became a promiscuous minx in the eyes of others. Everything about her was bad. Jiang Susu grew even more anxious when she saw that everyone was silent. Disregarding her drenched body, she stood up and rebuked the dark-skinned man. Why do you want to ruin my innocence? I will ask my father to investigate this carefully and put you in prison. The dark-skinned youth, however, looked as if he was struck. He murmured, you clearly did not say so at that time. Were all those promises in the past false? He spoke indignantly, you are abandoning me like this. Will I, Zhou, be discarded because you say so? Zhang Ruan almost laughed inwardly. She pitied her cowardly self in her previous life. At that time she was in a complete shambles, much worse than Jiang Susu's eloquent reply. Naturally, she had no way to appreciate Zhou Da's acting skills. Jiang Susu felt a vicious hatred toward Zhang Ruan when she heard the youth's reply. Naturally, she knew the matter of Zhou Da. But how could she be the one falling into the water? Zhang Ruan was the person that Zhou Da should be dealing with. At the moment, she was at a loss as to what to say in order to justify herself. Usually Xia Yin helped to plan and plot for her. However, at this moment, there was no one who could speak up for her. On top of that, she felt uncertain. Since her previous calm and careful planning had vanished without a trace, how could she even think of a countermeasure in the moment? Zhang Ruan didn't give Jiang Susu time to think. She told Zhou Da, young Master Zhou, this is not at all the time for disputes. The wind is cold right now. If Miss Jiang catches a cold, you wouldn't like for that to happen either. Why doesn't young Master Zhou come to visit the Jiang Fu some other day? Jiang Fu will definitely give you an explanation. While Zhou Da was hesitating, Jiang Susu screamed again. No, it's not me. I haven't done anything like that at all. It's him who is slandering me. Jiang Susu was not a fool. She knew that if the matter was handled as Zhang Ruan said, even though it might be calm at the moment, it would be seen as a tacit agreement of the affair. Tomorrow there would be numerous rumors circulating in the capital, and it would be too late. The commandery Princess Rongya sneered. Her amiable and pleasant looks had changed. Human testimony and material evidence all exist. I wonder why you are refusing to admit it and still want to save face? It was usually granted to the daughter of a Qinhuang, first-rank prince, or to a female of the imperial family by the emperor's decree. Earlier we had simply mentioned it as Princess Rongya. But this is the accurate translation since this is one rank lower than Gongzhu, princess. You. Jiang Susu glared at her. Her mood shifted, she simply stopped refuting. She turned her small face upward and bit her lower lip in silent tears. Her appearance made some people at the Qing Song boat feel compassionate. But in the end, the female guests on the Linglong boat had started gossiping. I didn't expect that she could be such a person. She usually looks like a fairy. It's beyond my expectation that she'd do such a dirty thing. Minister Zhang has completely lost his face thanks to her. It's ridiculous that she wants to continue denying it, even though the love token is in front of us. Under such pressure, Jiang Susu was unable to remain calm. On the Qing Song boat, the fifth prince frowned and looked at Jiang Susu with displeasure. Still very young, yet does not know how to cherish her good name. She's offending public morals. The eighth prince, Xianli, was thoughtful and silent. Emotsong nudged Xiao Xiao, then shook his head and sighed. How could this fairy-like beauty be so confused and fall for such a coarse man? How odd. Xiao Xiao did not reply, but Yifeng transmitted a message secretly from his hiding place. Master Zhang Fu's second young miss was at the Baoguang temple 5 years ago. Hearing this, Xiao Xiao frowned slightly and looked up at Jiang Susu again. At the moment, the dark-skinned man was insisting. This won't do. You rich people look down on commoners. Ajoda can't be sent away easily. I demand an explanation for today's humiliation. The butterflies and dragonflies were not in a hurry. Jiang Susu also felt a little desperate, seeing that there was no hope. Just then she heard a cold voice from the Qing Song boat. The green jade bead was a gift from this lord to Zhang Fu's second young lady. I don't know what it has to do with you. Zhang Ruan was stunned, only to see the handsome young man in black, brilliant as brocade, standing with hands behind his back with a cold look. That pair of eyes were like cold stars, sweeping around lightly, making people feel great pressure. Ben Wang. Lit. This prince. Iliism for titled princes. When Xiao Xiao Jining Wang uttered those words indifferently, he provided immediate relief to Jiang Susu. At once, everyone's eyes were focused on Xiao Xiao and Jiang Susu. People were speculating. Did Jining Wang and Jiang Susu have some kind of relationship? Otherwise, why would Jining Wang, who had always been cold, help her out of trouble for no reason? Jiang Susu was stunned at first and didn't know why Xiao Xiao wanted to help her. When she saw Xiao Xiao's peerless face, she was taken aback. Infatuation flashed in her eyes. She paid respect to him gracefully. Many thanks to Wang Ye for speaking out for me. If it wasn't for you today, I wouldn't be able to clean my name even if I jumped into the Yellow River. Wang Ye. Way of addressing prince/nobleman, Your Highness. Zhang Ruan looked at Xiao Xiao in a trance. Her heart churned. It was difficult for her to calm down. She had never heard of any relationship between Xiao Xiao and Jiang Susu in her past life. Xiao Xiao wasn't a man who had tender, protective feelings toward the fairer sex. How could he help Jiang Susu today? Was Jiang Susu destined to be lucky in both the past as well as the present life? Even if she met some hardships, there would be some noble person to help her. Was God so unfair? Feeling a piercing, bone-chilling gaze on his body, Xiao Xiao looked up. He couldn't help but feel a bit startled. Under the moonlight, he saw the girl in red on the opposite boat looking at him coldly. Her eyes were full of hatred, just like Azura from hell. Shala Azura, malevolent spirits in Indian mythology. Translated by Mazu. Chapter 64. J. Chapter 64. Exposing Lies. Zhoda never would have thought that in the middle of the journey, Jining Wang would appear. Jining Wang's identity was such that he would never dare to offend. However, with the current situation, it was difficult to continue on, nor could he back out halfway. Therefore he did not know what to do. Kihunangxia. An idiom meaning if you ride a tiger, it's hard to get off. Figure refers to doing something which is difficult to continue on and yet impossible to stop halfway. Once Xiao Xiao's words left his mouth, joy was written across Jiang Susu's face, while Commandery Princess Ronya and Su Ruashi's faces turned pale. Emotsong looked at Xiao Xiao with surprise, unable to decipher Xiao Xiao's words. Fifth Prince narrowed his eyes. It is unusual that Xiao Xiao would take the initiative to help the Zhang Fu's second young miss out of her situation. Xianli's eyes shone with profound meaning. Perhaps it really is Jining Wang's green jade bead. Zhang Ruan retracted her gaze and suddenly said to the stupefied and distracted Zhoda, "So it is you who is lying, that green jade bead is obviously Jinying Wang's. Then, where did Miss Zhang's handkerchief come from?" Hearing Zhang Ruan's words, Zhoda thought of something. The green jade bead was indeed Jinying Wang's, but the handkerchief that he had in his possession was also real. If he admitted to it, he would surely have to face severe consequences. However, if he chose to continue holding on and not admitting, he might get away without trouble. Zhoda had no principles, therefore he was good at playing dirty tricks. He laughed coldly, loudly saying, "Everything I said is true. Even if it's an influential and noble person, they cannot use power and influence to bully others. The handkerchief was something that Ruaner gave to me. She personally gave it to me as a token of love." As soon as those words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Zhang Ruan glared at him. "Who is the Ruaner you speak of?" Zhoda spoke with certainty. "Who else can it be? Of course it is the eldest young miss of Minister Zhang's Fu. Pu Qi." Zhang Ruan looked like she had just heard something very funny. Her eyes full of laughter. "You claim that Miss Zhang had long exchanged love tokens with you, and just now you even sacrificed your life to save her. I am not sure if you are aware who she is exactly?" "What do you mean?" Zhoda felt an uneasiness in his heart, feeling that something was not right. In response, Zhang Ruan's cold voice said, "What you have said was indeed convincing, but I am Zhang Fu's eldest young Mississippi. The Zhang Ruan in your eyes is actually Zhang Fu's second young miss, Zhang Su. The moonlight shone on her alluring face, bringing about more resolute coldness. "Young Master Zhou, is it possible that your forgetfulness is so great that you can't even recognize the one who had a romantic affair with you?" As they watched this event unfold, the surrounding people were clear on the twists and turns. The people present were all from noble families, thus they understood the scheme very clearly. Obviously, this Zhoda was full of lies, and he was acting on someone's order, wanting to ruin Zhang Fu's eldest young miss's reputation. Yet somehow, Zhang Fu's second young miss was implicated by accident. Lian Xiao and Bai Ji were relieved. On the other hand, Zhang Ruan's expression remained the same. Just now she kept calling Zhang Su Miss Zhang, her intention being to mislead Zhoda. Once Zhoda opened his mouth, the surrounding people were all smart. They naturally understood the crucial point within. Zhang Su's expression was unreadable. Although Zhoda had spoken truthfully, it still proved her innocence. However, because people would definitely speculate about the identity of the person who wanted to harm Zhang Ruan, she and Xia Yan would inevitably become the subjects of discussion among others. Zhang Ruan looked at Zhoda, her voice gentle. "This matter is confusing. It has really caused me a headache. However, because this concerns my reputation, it cannot end just like this. Young Master Zhou, perhaps you should explain this matter clearly to the patrol guards." Xuanbu. It refers to the police in olden times. Zhoda, seeing the situation turn unfavorable, immediately wanted to jump into the lake, planning to escape, but imperial bodyguards appeared from all four corners, subduing him. Xianli unexpectedly stood out, smiling politely. "Bring him to the patrol station." Zumbufang. It refers to the police station in olden times. Zhang Ruan took a quick glimpse at Xianli. He appeared coincidentally today. Was it because he wanted her to be grateful to him? Zhang Su immediately felt panic as she naturally understood what had happened with Zhoda. If he landed in the patrol guard's hands, Zhoda would expose the person behind the scenes. At that time, what could she and Xia Yan do? While she was thinking, Zhang Ruan had already walked in front of Zhoda, who was being subdued. She bent forward slightly so her eyes were level with Zhoda's, then gently said, "Young Master Zhou, I heard that the patrol station has 1,000 ways of torture, every method making a person feel better off dying than living. This incident is complicated. Young Master Zhou must think this through. You must not make irresponsible remarks." With that said, she smiled charmingly at Zhoda, her smile more radiant than the lanterns in the river's heart. Xianli's imperial bodyguards quickly dragged Zhoda away. Tonight's lantern festival was basically already ruined, with the unforeseen twists and turns on the boat. So, no one had an interest in continuing the festivities any longer. Also, because something like this had happened to Zhang Su, Zhang Ruan could only bring her back as soon as possible. The boat reached the shore, and as Zhang Ruan was bidding farewell to everyone, Xianli walked over. He put the coat in his hand over Jiang Susu's body and in a warm voice said, "The weather's turning cold and windy, take care not to catch a cold." The lantern's reflection added an exceptional warmth to his originally handsome face. Jiang Susu raised her head and looked at him, then shyly bowed and in a small voice said, "Many thanks to 8th Prince." Jiang Ruan raised her lips demurely. In her previous life, Xianli was warm to her. Yet in this life Jiang Susu fell into the water, so had the recipient of his concern now changed to Jiang Susu. Although Xianli was talking to Jiang Susu, his gaze kept following Jiang Ruan. He felt that Jiang Ruan was not willing to look at him, that while her expression was clearly gentle, he could distinctly feel her indifference. This type of feeling made Xianli inexplicably unhappy. Jiang Ruan smiled faintly, and coincidentally saw Xiao Xiao walking over from the opposite side. Suddenly, she said, "Regarding today's matter, many thanks to Wang Ye for helping out and defending the innocent." Though her voice was neither high nor low, it was loud enough to let the surrounding people hear everything clearly. The crowd recalled the words Xiao Xiao had spoken earlier. Though Jiang Susu was innocent, the green jade bead was something Xiao Xiao had purposely claimed to help her. Yet, there was some mockery in Jiang Ruan's words. Xiao Xiao looked at her coolly, his expression still indifferent. Dressed in black, his figure was tall and sturdy. His aloof and noble aura very quickly attracted the surrounding women. Even if they were puzzled by his actions just now, at this moment they couldn't care less. Jiang Ruan felt stuffiness in her heart. She decided to give up and turned her back to him, no longer acknowledging him. However, she saw a young master dressed in blue walking towards them from another direction. Standing firmly at her side, he asked with hesitation, "Miss Jiang, the sky is already dark. I'll order a few imperial bodyguards to protect you on your way back to your fu, is that good?" Though this young master looked only 15 or 16 years old, there was some probing in his words, and his gaze held a look of unconcealed anticipation. Jiang Ruan recognized him. He was young Master Gu from the Commander-in-Chief's fu. She smiled slightly with joy, naturally and unrestrainedly saying, "Many thanks to noble sir for his goodwill. If Ruan Yang refuses it would be impolite." Her action made Xian Li and Xiao Xiao, who both still stood there, seem dazed. Jiang Ruan's attitude towards young Master Gu was extremely gentle. In contrast, her attitude towards them was really not friendly. Xian Li, not knowing why, had a peculiar feeling. It was as if something which originally belonged to him was being taken away by others. Xiao Xiao's dark eyes only stared at Jiang Ruan, his expression pensive. Among the three people, only Gui was overjoyed. He did not expect the beauty to be as gentle as a flower. For a moment, he only knew how to stand rooted to the ground and smile to himself. Translated by Salve. Chapter 65. Chapter 65, Devising a Strategy. After sending Jiang Susu off to the carriage first, Gu Yi, who had been standing a few paces away from the window seat of the carriage, looked at Jiang Ruan with a somewhat flushed face. Jiang Ruan went over and gently spoke, "Many thanks, young Master Gu, for your protection. There is something that Ruan Yang wanted to say to young Master Gu. Actually, Ruan Yang has a request." Gui was startled at first, deeply concerned. If Miss Jiang has any troubles, if there is any way to help, Gui would definitely spare no effort in aiding you. Contrary to what one might expect, this person, Gui, was someone with tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Jiang Ruan nodded her head slightly. Presumably, young Master Gu is aware of a few things that have happened in Ruan Yang's home. Actually, this thing ought not be said, however. Upon seeing young Master Gu's utmost sincerity and an extremely kind and honest character, I believe that with this matter, only young Master Gu would be able to help. Thus, Ruan Yang has decided to thicken one's skin to seek such a favor. After hearing such flattering words from her, Gui was carried away, and so, his thoughts towards Jiang Ruan were much fonder and indulging. He listened to Jiang Ruan speaking in a low voice. Ruan Yang's eldest brother left the fu to serve in the army 5 years ago, and since then I have lost all contact with him. Ruan Yang's mother met with an early demise and eldest brother is the only blood-related relative left in the world. All these years, Ruan Yang has always tried to ask about him but has still ended up empty-handed. Her voice was gentle and there was a slight smile gracing her face. Even so, one did not know how it was possible, but unexpectedly one could hear a trace of worry in that soft voice. However, this sort of strength and forbearance made one feel a sense of pity and tenderness towards her. Gui soothingly replied, "Do not feel broken-hearted, Miss Jiang. Heaven helps the worthy. Your esteemed older brother would definitely be all right. Only with this matter, I'm not sure how I could help. Ruan Yang has heard that Darren's, General Guan and General Chun, have an extremely good friendship between them." Zhang Ruan gave a slight smile. 5 years ago, after my elder brother had joined the army, he happened to meet with General Guan and General Chun by chance while they were recruiting soldiers. Ruan Yang has considered that perhaps my elder brother is in General Guan or General Chen's camp. Since Commander-in-Chief Darren has a good relationship with these two generals, perhaps he could lend a hand and make some inquiries for Ruan Yang about my elder brother. Gui patted his chest. How could this be difficult? When I return, I will talk to father about this matter. Please be at ease, Miss Jiang. Once I hear some news about your esteemed older brother, I will get someone to inform you about it. Zhang Ruan solemnly gave him a formal bow. This kindness and grace that young Master Gu has given, Ruan Yang is unable to return the favor, and it can only be engraved on my heart. Someday, if there is an opportunity, I will definitely repay you. Gui was surprised and waved his hand in dismissal. It's only an effort similar to lifting one's hand. There is no need for Miss Jiang to be this polite. Now, can we be considered as friends? Zhang Ruan smiled, naturally. After bidding goodbye to Gui, Zhang Ruan then entered the carriage. Jiang Susu, Jiang Li and Jiang Dan were all waiting in the carriage. Upon seeing Zhang Ruan enter, Jiang Susu's eyes were full of fury that was difficult to restrain while Jiang Li merely gave a mocking laugh. "Vixen." Only Jiang Dan timidly smiled towards her in a cowardly manner. However, after experiencing tonight's affairs, Zhang Ruan had a deeper understanding of her. How could she possibly believe that she, Jiang Dan, was truly like her appearance, timid and afraid of getting into trouble? She was only afraid that in this Fu, there was another that had concealed herself deeper, and would not have found out about them in their daily life. The few people sitting in the carriage were all silent as it traveled all the way back to the Jiangfu's entrance. Upon seeing the additional and unfamiliar imperial bodyguards following the carriage, both the guards at the entrance and steward Zhang were extremely surprised. After Bai Ji had supported Zhang Ruan down from the carriage, Zhang Ruan smiled slightly to those imperial bodyguards. "Many thanks today to everyone. Please do help to express my thanks to young Master Gu." After hearing Zhang Ruan say this, Lian Xiao was all smiles as she stepped forward and passed on an embroidered purse of loose silver into the hands of one of the bodyguards. "Please do take this little bit of silver and have a drink with everyone." With no other alternative, the bodyguards looked at each other and left wordlessly after bidding a proper farewell. Steward Zhang had stayed in the Fu for quite some years now, and in one glance, he understood that these bodyguards were under orders from their master to protect Zhang Ruan. Upon seeing Zhang Ruan's calm and dependable demeanor, in the depths of his heart, he could not help but be doubtful. Is it possible that this eldest young lady had actually obtained some favor during tonight's Lantern Festival gathering? Meanwhile, Qing Ting had hurriedly hopped from the carriage as she helped an utterly drenched Jiang Susu down. While doing so, she urged, "Quickly call for the physician. The second young lady has fainted." At first glance, Steward Zhang turned pale with fright and hastily asked someone to find a physician. As he left instructions for the servants, he also had someone notify Xia Yan as he asked, "What has happened to the second young lady?" In her heart, Zhang Ruan chuckled. To have fainted as soon as she returned to the Fu, this method that Jiang Susu had thought of was rather convenient. However, how could she possibly have everything go as she just wished? How would she be willing to let things go if she did not stir up even more obstructions to hinder Jiang Susu? Shooting a glance at the outer jacket from Xianli that was draped over Jiang Susu's body, Zhang Ruan worriedly remarked, "Ermiai fell into the river and then even had her innocence defiled by a villain. For now, it's best if we wait for Ermiai to wake up. Later, we can have matters investigated at the patrol house, and once father returns, we can make a decision once more." What she said was ambiguous, and when Steward Zhang heard that wording, patrol house and her innocence defiled by a villain, his heart leapt. Cold sweat had begun to creep all over his back, and at that moment, he did not bother to ask and clarify the matter thoroughly. He merely knew that this time something big had happened. Yet once Jiang Susu, who had fainted, heard Jiang Ruan's words, her forehead twitched as her palms clenched tightly together. Jiang Ruan sighed, "Today I too am tired. To have such things happen, I will return to my residence and rest first. Let mother carefully console and comfort Ermiai, as this cannot be blamed on her either." After saying this, she brought Baiji and Lian Xiao with her as she returned to Ruanju. At the other end, Xia Yan had quickly rushed over. Immediately upon seeing Jiang Susu's sorry figure, she was rather alarmed. Jiang Quan had yet to return to the Fu, and upon seeing Xia Yan, Jiang Susu no longer feigned passing out. Seizing a grasp on Xia Yan's hand, she panicked, "Mother, what should we do? That Zhouda was sent to the patrol house. What if he recognizes us?" "Don't worry," Xia Yan replied calmly. "I had Li Momo find someone unrelated to the Fu to instruct Zhouda. In any event, we cannot be implicated. Rather, as for you, how did you suddenly fall into the water?" "I do not know either," Jiang Susu replied with a bite of her lips, "but I'm sure that Jiang Ruan is unable to escape any responsibility for it. What happened this evening was clearly something that she had thought up, but now that my reputation has been entirely ruined, what can we do now? It was me that has underestimated Jiang Ruan. However, now that we have the 8th Prince and Jining Wang on our side, we don't need to worry. Nevertheless, how do you have an association with Jining Wang?" "I am not sure either." Jiang Susu's face flushed. Perhaps he could not put up with what he saw. "He isn't that sort of person," Xia Yan decisively refuted. "I will take note of this matter. Jiang Ruan, that manipulative person, for her to have schemed against you in this manner, in the days ahead, I will definitely have her pay the price 100,000 folds." After saying this, there was an extremely prominent dark and sinister look in her eyes that was no longer like the virtuous and docile demeanor she usually portrayed. In Ruanju, Baiji was holding onto the white rabbit lantern as she walked over. Lu Zhu remarked curiously, "This lantern was made so exquisitely. Where did this come from?" Baiji took a glance at Jiang Ruan and replied, "The 8th Prince had someone to send it over. It's said to be a good omen on Ling Long Fong, and that our miss had forgotten to take it with her." Jiang Ruan side-eyed that lantern and replied indifferently, "This lantern can be gifted to Mei Qing Yuan, and say that it is a gift to Ermiai for receiving such a shock." Lu Zhu felt that it was somewhat a pity. Lian Xiao handed over a cup of hot tea to Jiang Ruan. "Miss, now that Zhouda has already been caught, although it can be said that it had been a command from that side, it might not be enough to have them confess or be lured out. Will this matter be settled just like that?" Lian Xiao saw clearly. Now that Xia Yan's maternal family was becoming more prosperous with each day, the patrol house still had to give her face. Thus, one could dare say that Zhouda's matter would be heavily placed into importance but also be lightly handled. If matters were truly settled in this way, then it would be such a waste to squander away the effort and time that Xia Yan has taken to arrange this. She lightly took a sip of tea. How could I possibly let her down? Chapter 66 Part 1. Chapter 66. The Top-Scoring Youth. Part 1. The Lantern Festival, held in the Great Jin Dynasty's 14th year, had passed in a more lively fashion than in previous years. Within the space of a night, Jiang Ruan's name was known throughout the capital. For a time, everyone in the capital was talking about the newly returned eldest miss of the Jiang Fu. Her stunning appearance, her incomparable talent, her regard for etiquette, and her noble manner. In fact, she was not inferior to the Jiang Fu's second young lady. When Jiang Susu awoke early the next morning, she saw an exquisite white rabbit lantern on the carved wood cabinet by her bed. She stared blankly at it for a moment before she suddenly burst forth in fury and called out in a shrill voice, "Servants! Qing Ting, Hu Dai!" Hu Dai ran into the room swiftly. "Miss, what has happened?" Jiang Susu pointed at the white rabbit lantern and said, "Who put this here?" Hu Dai was also shocked to see the lantern. "I did not see it this morning. How did it suddenly appear like that?" Upon hearing this, Nono, a third-rank servant girl who was standing behind Hu Dai, came forward to say, "It was the personal maid of eldest Miss Baiji who sent it here. This servant saw that the lantern was adorable, so I put it here." "And who allowed you to act on your own initiative?" Jiang Susu sneered. "Take her away." Two elderly yet robust maidservants immediately entered the room, seized the servant girl and dragged her out. In great alarm, that servant girl pleaded for forgiveness. "Second miss, this servant was at fault. Second miss, forgive this servant. This servant does not dare to do it again." The sound gradually faded away. Hu Dai carefully placed a cup of tea in Jiang Susu's hands and said, "Miss, drink some ginger tea to warm yourself." Jiang Susu flung off Hu Dai's hand. With one move, she grabbed the rabbit lantern off of the bedside cabinet and fiercely ripped it to pieces. In a fit of anger, she threw the remains onto the ground and stomped on them until nothing could be discerned of the lantern's original shape or appearance. "Zhang Ruan, that slut, clearly she's doing this deliberately. Does she think that she's so high and mighty now that she has achieved the lantern? Still, this is something that should not be disclosed to others." Jiang Susu sat on the couch and said, "There will come a day when she will be just like this lantern, bullied and humiliated by my hand." With the charged atmosphere, Hu Dai did not dare make a sound or movement. At this moment, Jiang Susu seemed like a devil, nothing at all like her usual gentle and innocent self. It was precisely at this time that a greatly agitated Qing Ting ran in and said, "Miss, bad news." Jiang Susu was already in a bad temper, so she said in annoyance, "Why are you being so careless and haphazard? What is it now?" This servant heard that the talk in the capital early this morning was all about that Zhou De, that he was an assassin hired by foreign to deliberately besmirch the reputation of eldest miss, but yesterday, he accidentally caused trouble for second miss instead. What? Jiang Susu immediately stood up, unable to take it all in. She queried, "Where did this talk originate from? Did Zhou De confess? That's impossible." "This servant is also not sure," Qing Ting said hurriedly. "Now the entire capital is talking about this as if it is the truth." Jiang Susu's face turned white. Mother clearly said that the matter of Zhou De would not be a problem. Who on earth has spread such talk? This is not good, I must see Mother. After speaking, she donned her coat. "Let's go quickly, Mother will think of a way to help me." In comparison with Mei Qing Yuan's chaotic situation, Ruanju was an oasis of leisurely calm. The chickens are flying and the dogs are jumping, because they have received a shock. Lu Zhu carefully placed a bowl of pearl and crystal jade Tang Yuan on the table, and took out a small dish of rose cakes from the basket. "These dianxin are a reward from the old Jiang madam. She says that Miss did very well last night, and bid Kai Ke Jie to send them over." Tang Yuan is a Chinese dessert made from a dough of glutinous rice flour mixed with water, rolled into balls, cooked and served in either sweet syrup, sweet ginger syrup, or boiling water with fermented glutinous rice, or deep fried. Tang Yuan can be in different colors, and have different fillings, such as sesame or peanut paste. Zhenju Fei Cui literally pearls and crystal jade. Tang Yuan are green and white balls. For more information, see here. Dian Xian is a style of Chinese cuisine featuring bite-sized portions of food served on small plates or in small bamboo steamer baskets. The food can be sweet or savory. Examples of common dianxin items are fried radish cake, barbecued pork buns, shrimp dumplings. See here for more information. Jiang Ruan smiled slightly. The old Jiang madam had made no mention of the matter concerning Jiang Susu. This attitude was certainly food for thought, and it appeared that Xia Yan had not been able to give a satisfactory explanation for the situation in front of the old Jiang madam. As Lu Zhu watched Jiang Ruan sample the dianxin, she said, "Miss, today a lot of wild rumors are circulating outside. They are saying someone intended to frame eldest miss, but caused misfortune for second miss instead." She paused and looked at Jiang Ruan, saying, "I should think Mei Qing Yuan must be under a lot of pressure at the moment. Miss, after doing this, you must feel a great sense of relief after all that oppression." Jiao Tu Lan Yi. Lit, to be badly burned around the head, while trying to put out a fire. Lian Xiao was sitting to the side, embroidering. On seeing Lu Zhu's face, she could not stop herself from saying, "It is a relief, however, Lu Zhu. Make sure everything that you do is absolutely safe. Just don't cause Miss any more trouble." "Jie, you can rest assured," Lu Zhu said, pleased with herself. "All I did was to find 30 children in the market, as well as some beggars at Dongcheng Gate. What's more, I use copper coins. There is no way they will be able to trace the source." Jiang Ruan sipped at the Tang Yuan soup and said, "You have done very well. Apart from this, did you say anything else? How would this servant dare to forget Mrs. Commands? Lu Zhu's face held a trace of hesitation. However, was phrasing it this way really good? That person's status. Whoever helps Jiang Susu is my enemy. How can I not make him pay the price? In any case, I was merely returning a little courtesy. He did cause me some unhappiness. Jiang Ruan smiled slightly as she replied. The storm of rumor swirling around the capital had not only reached the Jiangfu, but also the Jining Wangfu as well, where the elderly steward Lin tugged at his long beard until it was standing in all directions. What do we do? This rumor is getting more and more outrageous. Who on earth started spreading it? If I find out who it is, that person will have to pay the consequences. The person standing opposite him was Yi Feng. He moved his lips as he pondered, but still remained silent. Within the span of a night, about the same time the rumors started spreading regarding Xia Yan having hired people to tarnish Zhang Ruan's reputation, another rumor had sprung up. This one was claiming that Jining Wang Xiao had a deep affection for Jiang Susu, which is why he had unhesitatingly lied the previous evening to help her out of her predicament. This rumor was so vividly and realistically detailed, describing clearly how Jiang Susu and Xiao were each other's sunshine, that when Steward Lin heard it he was so agitated he almost lost his head. He knew exactly what kind of person his master was as he had watched him grow up. He had never heard Xiao mention Jiang Susu before. If it had not been for this rumor, Steward Lin would probably not even know who Jiang Susu was. Just who is it that wants to sully Wang Ye's pristine reputation? What kind of person is this Jiang Susu? What deep affection? Go to hell. Steward Lin had always been known for his explosive temper. Although he was getting on in age, he was still like a child, saying what he thought without hesitation. Yi Feng was used to him by now and simply looked to the heavens, feigning ignorance. It was at this time that they heard Xiao calling from within the residence. Yi Feng? Yi Feng hurriedly replied in a grave tone, Master, before dodging into the residence. He saw Xiao standing in front of a table, playing with the elaborate dagger in his hand as he asked, Did you find out who it was? It seems as though it was a servant girl from the Jiangfu, but the genie guards are still checking. Or it could have been the second miss of the Jiang family? Yi Feng tentatively asked. From his point of view, Xiao was good-looking, charming, and outstanding. Jiang Susu may have been spreading the rumor herself, hoping that it would strengthen her possibility of marrying Xiao. If the rumor did get around, then Jiang Susu would have no choice but to marry her. It's not her, Xiao said. Master thinks it is. Yi Feng had his misgivings, and could not help asking the question. The memory of the previous night's scene played out once again in front of Xiao's eyes, and he remembered the young girl clad in red who looked at him with such deep resentment in her eyes. He collected himself and said, coldly, Investigate the eldest miss of the Jiang family. The winds of rumor swirling around the capital reached many places, but naturally, there were also places that could not be reached. For example, Lu Min in the Imperial Academy had no clue about what had transpired the previous night. He had spent the past few days preparing for the preliminary rounds of the Imperial examination that would take place in a few days' time, and that person who never revealed his name was still in contact with him. Every day, he would place his reply on the table, and the other party would never take it, but another letter would appear. It was as if the person did not have to look at his reply to know what he would say. Over the short period of time of their interaction, Lu Min had discovered that this person was exceptionally talented, and that even when they had contrasting opinions, this person was always able to persuade him one step at a time. Moreover, the grounds for justification were sufficient, which caused him to have confidence in this person. Lu Min had no other friends in the Imperial Academy, so he had started to view this anonymous person as an intimate friend. Today there was another letter on the table, as was customary, but it did not discuss academic issues with him. Instead there were only two characters, good luck. This was offering him best wishes for his success in the upcoming round of the Imperial examination. Lu Min smiled and kept the letter safely. He turned and walked out of his room. Just as he stepped over the doorstep of the Imperial Academy library, he heard people talking. I never could have imagined that the recently returned Mimi of Jiang Xiong's family would be such an amazing person, and of such high caliber. Last night, with one dance, she dethroned the second Jiang Mississippi. Lu Min kept silent, walked to his seat and sat down. Of course, he knew that they had to be discussing something that had happened on the Linglong boat during the Lantern Festival. He himself came from an impoverished background and so did not qualify to participate, therefore he had no idea what exactly had happened, nor did he care to know. Furthermore, the eldest Jiang Miss life has been very bitter. She was sent to the rural residence at a young age, and she returned to the Jiang Fu only to provoke such a dastardly move by the Jiang Furen. It's so pitiful. Yet another young nobleman shook his head, his voice tinged with sympathy. Jiang Furen and second Jiang Miss usually seem very gentle and amiable. How could they do such a thing? Hey, one can know a person for a long time without knowing his or her true nature. Didn't you see the way second Jiang Miss and Jining Wang behaved last night? There must be something between them. This person had barely finished speaking when another scholar opposite him said, "You speak in such a sour tone of voice. You must indeed hate yourself for not being Jining Wang, unable to announce that you're marrying such a beauty." Jiren Jimian Biuji Xian. Lit. Know the person, know the face, but don't know the heart. Everyone burst into laughter. At this time someone walked in through the door, wearing a rain silk brocade jacket and with his brows tightly knit. It was Zhang Chao. With his entrance, the discussion came to an abrupt halt, but the eyes that followed him still harbored some ridicule. Naturally, Zhang Chao understood the intent of their glances, and an indescribable fire immediately ignited in his heart, as he felt that they were all looking at him like he was some kind of joke. As a result, he entered the room with big strides, and as he walked past Lu Min, he bumped heavily into his table. Unexpectedly, the inkstand on Lu Min's table flipped over and the ink fell on Lu Min. Zhang Chao turned back fiercely. A few drops of ink had also landed on his brocade jacket. He had already been raging silently, and now that the ink had stained his clothes, he did not wait for Lu Min to speak but moved forward to grab and then yank him out of his seat. "What are you doing?" In the Imperial Academy, Zhang Chao had always shown himself to be gentle and warm. Although he was not close to Lu Min, he would never intentionally provoke him. Today's behavior was a result of his sullen mood. The scholars in the Imperial Academy were generally from the noble families, so he was unable to give offense freely. Considering the people around him, Lu Min was the only person he could use as a punching bag as he wished. The others were watching him without saying anything, and no one would come to Lu Min's aid. Zhang Chao had yanked Lu Min up by his collar. Lu Min was neither as tall as Zhang Chao nor as sturdy as him, so he merely fixed his clear, unyielding eyes on Zhang Chao and remained silent. Zhang Chao became unutterably furious when he saw no trace of fear in Lu Min's eyes. Taking a deep breath, he smiled abruptly and said in a tone laced with malice, "You have dirtied my clothes. What do you think we should do?" Lu Min usually held himself aloof as he went around the academy. If he had met with situations like this one in the past, he would have vociferously defended his rights, preferring to die than to give in. That Zhang Chao would speak in such a manner was a grave insult to him, considering his excellent sense of self-respect, and everyone was waiting for the fireworks to start. However, to everyone's surprise, the usually obstinate young man inclined his head slightly and said, "I apologize." Everyone was rooted to the spot in shock. Somehow, in that split second before he gave in to his impulses, Lu Min had suddenly thought of that anonymous person who kept sending him letters. In one of those letters, the other party had debated with Lu Min whether one should submit to those in higher and more influential positions. Lu Min preferred death to submission, but the other party thought otherwise. He said as long as one's heart and character were upright and honest, it would be prudent and sensible to comply with the ways of the world. For example, the bamboo trees in a bamboo grove were seldom broken off, because the bamboo could bend with the wind, yet still maintain its upright shape and form. It would never be blown down or blown away by the wind. On the other hand, the unyieldingly upright, lone trees, and the wildflowers that grew by the roadside, were the ones most easily snapped by the wind. The former did not know how to bend, and the latter did not know how to remain upright. Everyone should be able to exhibit some degree of compliance and perseverance. An intelligent person who is able to master these capabilities would be able to do whatever he set his mind to. It was at this time that Lu Min suddenly recalled this paragraph in the letter. The other party had said that, in this world's affairs, it was perhaps much harder to bend over than to persist. He eyed a rather listless Jiang Chao and repeated, "I apologize." Jiang Chao came to his senses. He had never imagined that this impoverished, haughty person would apologize in front of him, but he was definitely not happy. Although Lu Min had said these words, he could see from his eyes that Lu Min was just as haughty as before, and was seemingly mocking his juvenile behavior. For a moment, the rage in his heart flared even hotter. He sneered, "Do you think a verbal apology is good enough? If you don't lick this clean for me today, don't even think about leaving this room." The other scholars could not stop talking amongst themselves as they saw this scene unfolding before them. Although they also regularly bullied Lu Min, when it came down to it, they were all scholars, and should not be willing to participate in or initiate such degrading behavior. In addition, the fact that someone as gentle and warm as Jiang Chao was behaving in such an aggressively imperious fashion caused them to be contemptuous of him. Jiang Chao was totally unaware of the views of those around him. The only thing on his mind was to make things as difficult for Lu Min as possible, so that he would be reduced to begging in front of him. If he refused to beg for mercy, even if he managed to get out of this current situation, he would have plenty of trouble in the future. After all, he had a bedridden mother. Lu Min squeezed his palms together. A hint of annoyance crossed his naturally delicate face, but he suppressed it very quickly. He took off his faded outer jacket and said softly, "If this is what Master Jiang wants, then Lu Min can only do as he says." After saying this, he knelt down in order to lick off the ink drops from the corner of Jiang Chao's clothes. Everyone held their breaths. Today's events were indeed too odd. Firstly, that the ordinarily cordial Jiang Chao would become so overbearing, and secondly, that the usually solitary, arrogant and candid Lu Min would bend the knee and exercise forbearance. Jiang Chao still stood in the same spot, his heart filled with an indescribable anger. Initially, he had intended to use Lu Min as a means to vent his frustration, but he never thought that Lu Min acted like a totally different person. It was like punching on soft, velvety cotton. What had clearly been intended as a move to demean Lu Min had somehow, with one look from Lu Min's clear, haughty eyes, reversed the situation such that Lu Min seemed to be the person with the noble status, looking down on him. Jiang Chao could not bear the thought and moved to stamp on Lu Min's body. Who knew, just as he raised his leg, something struck his knee so that he was rendered immobile. Emotsong stepped forward. He said, "Where it is possible to let people off, one should spare them. Zhang Xiong, is it necessary to make a fuss over an item of clothing? Lu Xiong did not do it intentionally, so is it necessary to upset his mood just a few days before the preliminary round of the imperial examination? Let Xiaodi give you an item of clothing in compensation, and Zhang Xiong can stop making things difficult for Lu Xiong." Lu Min eyed Emotsong, never having thought that he would speak on his behalf. Jiang Chao was also astonished, but Emotsong's status was such that he could not freely act against him. Thus, even though he was still in a towering rage, he could not express it. He shook out his sleeves and snorted as he left the room with big strides, not once looking back. Once Jiang Chao had left, Emotsong told Lu Min it's all right. Lu Min stood up and lightly brushed the dust off his body. He did not seem concerned about the ink all over him as he thanked Emotsong and resumed his seat to silently peruse his scrolls. His movements were confident and relaxed, without any hint of suppressed frustration, as if the altercation had not even occurred. Emotsong observed him and a deep thought flashed in his eyes. The Imperial Academy scholars were used to wrangling in this fashion, but they did not realize that the situation that had just played had been witnessed by two people, Master of Record Song and Chancellor Chan, who were both standing by the door. Master of Record Song was slightly angry. Jiang Chao is too unreasonable. What does he think the Imperial Academy is, that he can come here and display such unreasonable behavior as he likes, just because he is from a noble lineage? This brings such dishonor to scholars. His heart was full of anger which he could not control, Chancellor Chan said. They too had heard of the previous night's events, and naturally knew why Jiang Chao was behaving abnormally. No matter the reason, he should not have treated a colleague this way. Master of Records Song said in annoyance. Lu Min surprised me today. He actually knows how to yield. If it had been in the past, I don't know how big the storm would have been. If it had been in the past, with Lu Min's temper, it was indeed bound to become a big mess. Even though, logically speaking, Lu Min had just caused, Minister Jiang was extremely prone to shielding someone by hiding their faults despite knowing that they were in the wrong, especially his D-son and D-daughter. In the end, the person to suffer would still be Lu Min. That he knows how to bend and yield is the most terrifying aspect. Chancellor Chen's gaze deepened. Previously we thought little of him, but this boy can bend and stretch. If he is able to enter the imperial court, he will definitely become someone very capable and highly valued. The difference between him and Zhang Chao is considerable. Master of Record Song was accustomed to Chancellor Chen not thinking highly of Lu Min. That he would actually spontaneously praise Lu Min at present, and hold the same view as himself, caused Master of Record Song to feel relieved. He said in an agreeable manner, indeed, Lu Min is utterly sincere, and is always upright and forthright in his conduct towards others. Truly a rare talent. Chancellor Chen smiled and did not say anything else. Chapter 66 Part 2. Chapter 66. The Top-Scoring Youth Part 2. Jiang Chao rushed home to the Jiangfu in a fit of rage and charged towards Mei Qingyuan. Lin Lang noticed the ill-tempered expression on his face and hastily said to him, "Second young master, foreign is speaking to young miss at the moment." Out of the way. Jiang Chao shoved Lin Lang aside. As he entered the room, he saw Jiang Susu lying in Xia Yan's arms sobbing unceasingly as Xia Yan attentively comforted her. As Jiang Chao observed Jiang Susu crying, his emotions and thoughts were thrown into an even greater turmoil. He said, "What are you crying about? You have done something like this, making it impossible for me to hold my head up in the Imperial Academy, and all you can do now is cry?" Jiang Susu was shocked. In an aggrieved tone she said, "Why are you being so fierce towards me? Is it possible that I would be happy? Right now my reputation is in ruins. Second brother, you're not consoling me, and even heaping criticism on me. What do you think you're doing?" "Enough." Xia Yan frowned as she looked at Jiang Chao and said, "Chaoer, what's wrong with you? Suer, you are the younger sister. How can you speak to him this way?" Jiang Chao took another look at Jiang Susu's beautiful, tear-stained little face and felt his anger dissipate slightly. He sat at a small table to the side and said, "I'm not criticizing her. It's just that today the entire city was full of rumors about what happened last night, and I could not hold my head up in the Imperial Academy. Mother was being painted as a malicious woman, and younger sister had become a joke. As a result, I feel extremely vexed." Xia Yan gritted her teeth. Zhoda clearly said no such thing while in prison. Someone must have deliberately spread the rumors to sully my Suer's reputation. Whoever it is has such an insidious mind. Who could have done this? Jiang Chao asked angrily. "Show me where to find them, and I will skin them alive." Jiang Susu snorted coldly and said, "Who else could it be? Apart from that slut Zhang Ruan, who else would do this?" "Zhang Ruan?" Jiang Chao asked doubtfully. In his eyes, Zhang Ruan was just a young motherless girl. How was it possible for her to have such deceptive, tricky ways? How on earth would she be capable of doing something as big as this? Jiang Susu's fingernails dug into her palms. "You are simply underestimating her." "I too think it's odd," Xia Yan said as she frowned. "It was clearly supposed to be Zhang Ruan falling into the river. How did it become Suer? That business with the handkerchief was also very queer. Whether or not she was involved, Zhang Ruan cannot be allowed to stay." She felt, although Zhang Ruan looked so unremarkable, she always gave people the chills. "Mother, you must avenge me," Jiang Susu cried. "She must fall completely from grace and be utterly ruined." "Don't fret." Xia Yan laughed, but there was no humor in her eyes. "I have already told your father about this situation. I only said that you fell into the water, but that there was something strange about the whole situation. In the next few days you should work hard to gain your father's favor. I have 1,000 ways to destroy this slut. As for Jining Wang, you should compose a message within the next few days, saying you would like to visit him at his fu to express your gratitude for his help. Then we can find out what his intentions are." When Xiao Xiao was mentioned, Jiang Susu's pretty face immediately turned red. She shyly bowed her head and did not speak further. Jiang Chao contemplated for a moment before saying, "If Jinying Wang really likes younger sister, then he will be able to help me in the future when I become a court official." "Second brother, what are you saying?" Jiang Susu was somewhat embarrassed. Xia Yan also frowned as she said, "Watch your words. How can you bring up your sister's good name and talk about it so freely?" She paused, then continued, "Right now, you should be studying hard so that you can grab the first place in the preliminary round of the imperial examination in a few days' time. By that time, Suer's situation will most probably be forgotten in the rush of events, and your father will also be happier. At that time, Zhang Ruan will still be nothing but a little ant, and you can then deal with her as you like." Hearing this, Jiang Susu immediately said, "Second brother, don't disappoint us." Jiang Chao waved his hand. "Don't worry, everything is in order, and I have made sufficient preparation. I will definitely be able to achieve a good rank. When the time comes, my rise to success is going to be meteoric. I will definitely become a distinguished person, and those inferior people won't be fit to even carry my shoes." Having said this, his eyes clouded over as the memory of Lu Min's aloof gaze flashed across his mind. Xia Yan patted his shoulder. "My son, mother will pray for you." When Lu Zhu's discreet inquiries at Mei Qingyuan unearthed this conversation, she immediately reported it to Zhang Ruan, who merely smiled faintly. Lu Zhu took note of her indifferent attitude and asked, with some impatience, "Miss, it will be the preliminary round of the imperial examination in a few days' time. Second young master obviously has a well-thought-out strategy. If he really does achieve the top ranking, won't that be disastrous for us? He has no talent and no morals, how will he achieve the top rank?" Zhang Ruan looked over the painting she had just completed and put down her brush. Lu Zhu moved closer to take a look. Painted on the scroll was a moonlit scene. The moonlight shone brightly on the mountains, and the faint light from the fireflies glimmered within the forest. "Miss has painted this beautifully," Lu Zhu said in praise. "Should we hang this up?" "No need, send it to the Imperial Academy," Zhang Ruan said. "A painting?" Lu Zhu asked in shock. "Miss wants to send a painting? Not a letter?" "He will understand," Zhang Ruan said as she rolled up the scroll. Moonlight and fireflies. The one whose light was brighter would shine forth and illuminate a greater area. Fireflies were only able to fly to locations within a short radius of several meters, and their light could only illuminate a small area. On the other hand, the moon was so high in the sky that it could illuminate mountains and rivers, lakes and seas. The higher the position, the wider the area of illumination. If one wanted to help more people, then one required even more power. It is only with the highest position that one could have the freedom to do as one wanted. It would be impossible for the intelligent Lu Min to not understand this principle. Although Lu Zhu did not understand why, she still took the scroll as Zhang Ruan whispered additional instructions to her. Lu Zhu's face expressed her surprise, but she nodded and went out. In the following days, all was quiet. On the surface, nothing of note occurred. However, new rumors had started making the rounds in the capital that after the emperor had appointed Zhao Darren of the Imperial Hanlin Academy as the chief examiner, Zhao Darren had started accepting bribes and gifts from the candidates. When this matter had become widespread talk among the people, the imperial censors had, one after another, petitioned the emperor to investigate the matter thoroughly. The yearly preliminary round of the imperial examination was of such great import that the emperor had been incensed upon hearing the news, and had ordered another examiner to take over while he suspended Zhao Darren and placed him under investigation. When the news of Zhao Darren's suspension was made known, it was said that Jiang Quan did not return to the Jiangfu for 2 days, and when he did, he was in a raging temper. Mei Qingyuan was a complete mess, and Jiang Chao was black-faced as he dealt out punishments to quite a few servant girls who were guilty of minor infringements. The Jiangfu's servants were on tenterhooks all day long. Only Ruanju was as peaceful as it usually was. It was at this time that Jiang Susu sent a message ahead of herself to Jinying Wang Fu, declaring her intention to visit Xiao Xiao in order to express her gratitude for his help on the night of the Lantern Festival. Who knew that Xiao Xiao was not there? Instead, Jiang Susu encountered Jinying Wang Fu's 61-year-old loyal steward, who heaped a torrent of verbal abuse upon her. leaving her to rush home in a fury. Lian Xiao and Lu Zhu were simply dying to enact Jiang Susu's angry and embarrassed appearance for Jiang Ruan, who could not help but feel a little more at ease as a result. In addition, Zhou Momo's condition had improved greatly with careful nursing. She was able to carry out simple tasks in Ruanju, but she tied a strip of cloth around her eyes in order to not frighten the other servants. As for the servant girls that Xia Yan had sent to Ruanju, Jiang Ruan had left them alone. Lian Xiao was rather hot-headed, so she had set out to manage these servants until they were obedient and submissive. Although Baiji looked gentle in reality, she basically did not like getting close to people. Thus, these servant girls were treated in an offhand manner while at Ruanju, and consequently always felt unsettled and at a loss as to what to do. The only exception was Xu Xiang. She did her work neatly and proved herself to be quick-witted. She was also gentle and always behaved in a proper manner, such that Lian Xiao and Baiji could not find fault with her at all. Meanwhile, the rumors in the capital pertaining to the mother-daughter pair of Xia Yan and Jiang Susu had been superseded by the talk of the chief examiner's acceptance of bribes, so it could be said that they had profited from this disaster. On the day of the Imperial Civil Service examination, overseen by the Ministry of Rights, Zhang Chao was not very happy when he returned to the Fu. This was because the emperor had appointed the upright and unyielding Ji Chan as the chief examiner who gave absolutely no room for negotiation. Everyone waited nervously for the day the results were to be released. Surprisingly, Zhang Chao only managed to place 458th, and did not even achieve the Gongyuan. Zhang Quan shut himself in his library and refused to see anyone. The previous day's action of taking Zhang Chao to social events around the capital now seemed to be one big joke. Jiang Susu was extremely disappointed. Xia Yan wanted to comfort and advise Zhang Quan, but for the first time, he lashed out against her. Lin Lang could only stand to one side, not daring to open her mouth. Gongyuan. It seems this is a plaque which the candidate who came in first in his province/county could display outside his residence, something like a medal of honor. When Zhang Chao received news of his failure, without a word, he immediately walked out of the Fu. He spent the next few days in public houses drinking himself into a drunken stupor. He did not go home and seemed to be in a pit of depression. Lu Zhu recounted all of this to Jiang Ruan in a voice full of pent-up anger. So, it turns out that second young master was just talking big when in reality he was totally lacking in ability. They say he has been drinking every day. Today, master sent people to accompany him back home, intending to teach him a good lesson according to family rules. Jiang Ruan took a sip of her tea and said, "He's proud and arrogant, and values face more than his life. Naturally, he is not able to accept failure. This servant thinks that second young master is not as good as Miss is way more intelligent than he is." Lu Zhu pursed her lips. Jiang Ruan lowered her eyes and remained silent. Over the past few days, she had sent Lu Zhu to the marketplace to spread the rumor that the chief examiner was taking bribes. In her previous life, the truth about Zhao Daren's acceptance of bribes had only been exposed a few years later. Not that she had revealed the truth early, the emperor was bound to appoint a new chief examiner. In order to be prepared for any eventuality, the new appointee was an upright and plain-spoken person, a member of the Qinglu who did not take part in the power struggles. Although Jiang Chao's essay was alright, it was also excessively slick and evasive. Thus, someone from the Qinglu would definitely look down on this kind of essay. So, even if he had not failed, he was not going to achieve a good ranking. Qinglu. Historically, this refers to the group of uncontaminated people who were concerned with politics but held themselves aloof from those in power. On the other hand, Lu Min's upright and solitary temperament would definitely pique the chief examiner's interest. Moreover, at the court examinations, the top-grade imperial exam, presided over by the emperor himself, because of the letters she had written him subtly influencing him to change his perspective, he would definitely leave a good impression on the emperor. Lu Min, Jiang Ruan thought with a wry smile, don't disappoint me. Sure enough, 3 days later, when the results of the court examinations were released, the emperor awarded Lu Min the highest rank Zhuangyuan, Mo Tsong ranked second Bangyan, and Wang Ziling ranked third, Tianhua Lang. The top 3 rankers rode horses in a parade through the streets. All 3 of them wore their new officials' gowns and rode high on their horses, looking for all the world like the fine young talents they were. Many young ladies stole out from the women's quarters to sneak a look at them. The person who attracted the most attention was the Zhuangyuan Lang, the top-scoring youth. His features were already exquisite, but the red official's gown lent him a more kindly and gentle appearance, while also emphasizing his lofty and unyielding nature, as one of the Qing Lu. When his white horse went by, the bolder ladies threw silk flowers to him. Lu Min's heart still harbored some suspicion, as he still remembered the question posed by the emperor in the court examination. I heard that in the past, wise men governed the nation by emphasizing honor, morals and customs, and the nation flourished. When these wise men departed, the nation declined. Therefore, the right way to govern a nation is by honor, morals and customs. However, others say that, while all these sentiments are good, they are not effective in controlling and managing the people. Balance must be achieved by means of law and order that all people adhere to so that the nation can experience prosperity and stability. Gentlemen, what is your opinion? T/N. Refer to ch 50 for context. The instant he heard the examination question, he was shocked to the core. It was exactly the same question the mysterious person had posed in the first letter to him. Immediately, he was thrown into confusion. Previously, he had believed that one should rule a nation by emphasizing honor, morals and customs. However, the other party had argued that these must be integrated with law and order so as to rule the nation. He had reason and justifiable grounds, and thus had been convincing. When the question was recreated in the court examination, Lu Min had settled his state of mind and argued frankly, just as if he had been arguing with that mysterious person. Honor, morals and customs are just as important as law and order. Ruling by honor, morals and customs, the nation would have everlasting peace. Ruling by law and order, the nation would be strong and prosperous. He had been somewhat uneasy at first, but the more he spoke, the more fluent he became, and the more impassioned as well. His initial hesitation was tossed to the wind as, for the first time, he spoke with confidence about his aspirations. After he had finished speaking, he had bowed before the emperor and said softly, "This is the humble opinion of this scholar." There was silence all around for some time, before laughter was heard from the person in the highest seat. Clapping his hands, that person said, "Good, well said. I am extremely gratified to see that great Jin has such an esteemed talent." In a haze after the emperor had bestowed the title of Zhuangyuan Lang on him, Lu Min still could not believe that this was happening. Mo Tsong came over to congratulate him. "Lu Xiong, your perspective is really new and original, and it is very different from Lu Xiong's view in the past." He responded courteously, but his heart was increasingly suspicious. If it were not for the fact that he knew the emperor had no such indulgences, he would have almost wondered if the mysterious person was the emperor himself. However, when all was said and done, if this person was not the emperor, then who could it be? Who would know the examination question beforehand, and why would this person help him? Lu Min's feelings were confused. All his life, he had been straightforward and upright. He had never used this kind of dishonorable method to achieve anything. However, for the time being, he did not want to volunteer any information about the situation. The minute he spoke out, the person who had been secretly helping him would also be implicated, and all that he had achieved would go up in smoke. He recalled the painting that the person had sent him. The higher the position, the greater the ability. The young Zhuangyuan Lang was pleased as punch with his success. However, he failed to notice a face within the dense crowd of people, shrouded in gloom, looking at him with eyes full of bitter rancor. Thoroughly intoxicated, he stared at the Zhuangyuan Lang whose star was rapidly ascending. His standing was even higher than before, and his arrogant eyes seemed to barely tolerate other people. Zhang Chao clenched his fists as he asked himself why. He turned and disappeared into the crowd. That day, the whole of the Great Jin dynasty's capital city turned out in full force to steal a glimpse of the graceful bearing of the Zhuangyuan Lang. However, there was a person who stole into the residences at the Imperial Academy. Lu Min's room had yet to be tidied and was in its usual state. Xiao Xiao, in deep black brocade embroidered with refreshing decorative designs from head to toe, stood in front of Lu Min's table. He reached out to take hold of the letter on the table. There were only 5 words in the letter. "Many thanks. Who are you? Xiao Xiao raised his eyebrows. Emo Tsong had said that Lu Min was a totally different person when compared to his previous self, and the difference had been even more marked when he shared his opinion during the court examination. A person's long-held beliefs could not be so easily changed, and Lu Min's temperament was entirely unsuitable for being a court official. There was definitely something odd about him being selected by the emperor as the Zhuang Yuanlang. For example, this letter. Lu Min's family only consisted of a sick, bedridden mother, and he had no close friends in the Imperial Academy. This "who are you" was indeed intriguing. Xiao Xiao opened the cabinet in front of the table to reveal a stack of books. When he extracted the book right at the bottom, a wad of letters spilled out. He saw the words on the topmost letter. It looked like an ordinary exchange of opinions between two scholars. The brushstrokes were sharp yet reserved, and did not look overly polished and sleek. At first glance, the style was very similar to that of the 8th Prince Xianli. But this person was definitely not Xianli. Xiao Xiao looked at the letter at the bottom of the pile, where it was clearly written, "I heard that in the past, wise men governed the nation by emphasizing honor, morals and customs, and the nation flourished. When these wise men departed, the nation declined. Therefore, the right way to govern a nation is by honor, morals and customs. However, others say that, while all these sentiments are good, they are not effective in controlling and managing the people. Balance must be achieved by means of law, and order that all people adhere to so that the nation can experience prosperity and stability." He was slightly taken aback, and a severe expression flashed across his cold eyes. This was the question in the court examination, and from the looks of this, someone had written this letter to Lu Min way before the court examination. Who on earth was this person? It must be someone close to the emperor. Could there be a hidden traitor within the ranks? However, Lu Min was merely a scholar from the common class. There was nothing to gain from helping him. Perhaps Zhao Daren's acceptance of bribes a few days ago had something to do with this. Xiao Xiao thrust the letter into his bosom and said, "Guards." "Master." In a flash, there were 2 black-clad men in the room. "Send a group of genie guards to keep a watch on the Imperial Academy, and follow the messenger who delivered these letters," said Xiao Xiao. "The 2 of you monitor Lu Min." "Yes, sir." Xiao Xiao nodded. His elegant face, full of heroic spirit, just happened to notice the painting hanging in front of Lu Min's table, where the moonlight shone brightly on the mountains and lakes, and the gleam of fireflies dotted the forest. He looked at it for a moment, then turned and walked out of the room. The graceful bearing of the Zhuang Yuanlang won the admiration of many young ladies yet to be married, who were still sequestered in the women's quarters. That evening, Jiang Ruan did not read her books. Lian Xiao and Baizhi exchanged glances before Lian Xiao said, "Today, many servants in the Fu were saying that the Zhuang Yuanlang is very good-looking and extremely graceful and elegant, truly a man of talent." Baizhi glared at Lian Xiao. "What kind of nonsense are you spouting in front of Miss? And without the least bit of shame? Can it be that you are suffering from unrequited love? You wretched hussy! Be surprised if I don't tear out your lips." Lian Xiao's face turned red as she laughingly heckled Baizhi. "Right now I'm very happy. The more satisfied Zhuang Yuanlang is, the more dispirited those people in that place will be. When I think of this, I cannot help but be happy." These words cannot be said too carelessly. Baizhi cast a glance outside the door. "Don't forget that there are others outside, and the walls have ears." She was speaking of Xu Xiang and the rest. Jiang Ruan smiled slightly. Second brother is probably feeling that the situation right now is intolerable, and will likely make his way to a tavern to drink. Yesterday, a new one opened in the east of the capital, and it is near the biggest brothel in the capital by Hualu. It just so happens that today is the deflowering ceremony for Miss Mudan. Second brother has been disappointed by the imperial examination's results, so he needs to gain satisfaction from the affairs of the heart. However, Miss Mudan comes at a considerable price. Second brother is rich and arrogant, but it is not certain that Jiang Fu has the silver necessary to pay the price for this beauty of second brothers. Lian Xiao and Baizhi looked at each other and saw the surprise in the other's eyes. Jiang Ruan was a wise and virtuous lady who kept to her chambers, yet she spoke of the brothel in a relaxed and magnanimous fashion, which caused them to feel uncomfortable and tense. At this point, Lu Zhu entered the room. When she saw Jiang Ruan looking at her, she walked over to half-squat by Jiang Ruan's side. She whispered, "Miss, it's done." This servant sent Dinyo to accompany second young master to the tavern, and deliberately mentioned that Miss Mu Dan admires talented scholars the most. "I think nothing will go wrong." Jiang Ruan smiled slightly. The capital's Bai Hua Lu was a money-squandering establishment. It had already taken possession of silver from the children of many of the prosperous families. Miss Mu Dan was the main draw of Bai Hua Lu. On normal days it was her skills but not her body on offer, and she had both natural talent and natural beauty. Today, as it was her deflowering ceremony, there would be many people hoping to fulfill their desire to be her intimate guest. Rumuji bin. Lit. A guest. Who is able to enter the curtain/screen. Rooms in a house were usually separated by curtains, and in a brothel the performers were usually separated from their audience by a curtain too. Only special guests would be invited to go beyond the curtain to a person's private room. In the same way, only those guests recognized or admired by the performer would be allowed to actually meet her. Probably, the implication is that many of the brothel guests wanted to be the first to deflower Miss Mu Dan, go through the curtain. Miss Mu Dan had an addiction. She really liked talented scholars. If someone was particularly talented and received her direct favor, naturally, his luck with women was good. Zhang Chao had failed the examination, and he had just witnessed the Zhuang Yuanlang, flushed with success. He was likely to be upset and indignant about the entire situation, finding it unbearable. Becoming Miss Mu Dan's intimate guest would probably be the only thing that would soothe his heart. While Miss Mu Dan said she liked talented scholars, in the end she was still in the flesh trade. It was not unusual for her to earn thousands of pounds in gold a night, let alone this first night. Many young masters from upper-class families were fighting for the opportunity to be the one, so how could Zhang Chao stand out? In her previous life, the right to participate in Miss Mu Dan's deflowering ceremony had been bought by Li Yang, the eldest son of the capital's powerful minister, Senior Marquis Li Dong. Li Yang had bought the first night of Miss Mu Dan with 10 hu of precious gems and 5,000 liangsiks of gold. As a result, Miss Mu Dan enjoyed the fame throughout the capital of being its most expensive courtesan. In this life she was not sure if Zhang Chao had the resources to challenge Li Yang. Hu. An ancient dry measure, equivalent to 50 liters. 6 liang. A tael, a unit of weight equivalent to 50 g. Which means Li Yang paid 250 kilograms of gold and 500 liters of gems. Li Dong. Zhang Ruan smiled coldly. She would never forget how, in her previous life, Pei'er had died under him. 7. Li Yang's appearance at this time marked a new beginning. The death knell had sounded. Her vengeance was finally starting. 7T/N. Refer to Ch1 for a refresher. Pei'er was Zhang Ruan's foster son, who died while being raped and bullied by Li Dong in front of her eyes. Chapter 67 Part 1. Chapter 67. Ceaselessly Lustful Nature, Part 1. Among the 12 brothels of the capital, the most alluring one was Bai Hua Lu. The magnificent Bai Hua Lu was located in the most prosperous Rui Alley on West Street. The ladies of Bai Hua Lu all had their own fortes, which compelled men to indulge in their pleasure and neglect their own families. To say they earned thousands every day was no exaggeration. Miss Mu Dan from Bai Hua Lu was its most famous attraction. She had an elegant and proud demeanor and was extremely charming. Due to her having some Western blood in her, her exotic features were striking and stunning, thus adding to her seductiveness. She did things daringly and resolutely, yet was good-tempered and talented. All kinds of contradicting qualities enhanced her charm. Many people had offered a large sum of money, wanting to capture the beauty's heart and body, but regrettably, Miss Mu Dan made a living through performances and not by selling her body. Yet tonight, for the first time in the 3 years since she had entered Bai Hua Lu, she offered to sell her body. At this moment Bai Hua Lu was extremely crowded, and the main hall with the beaded curtains was filled with several rich young masters from noble families. Everyone wanted to be Miss Mu Dan's guest of honor. A young master in green, seemingly in his early 20s, was sitting in the middle. His appearance was considered good-looking except for the bruise at the bottom of his eye which made people feel disgusted. Obvious at first glance, it was caused by overindulgence. He fanned himself with one hand and in a subtle flirting tone he said, "Why is Miss Mudan not out yet, making everyone wait for so long?" A young lady in a thin pink skirt was standing at his side. Her jade-like hands were holding a small wine cup as she gently assisted the young master in green. Mudan Jiejie is currently getting dressed. Young Master Li's words have deeply hurt Nujia. Could it be that only Mudan Jiejie is recognized? Nujia, your servant. Humble self-reference by young female. The young master in green was the eldest son of the capital's senior Marquis Li Dong. Li Dong had 2 sons in total. The eldest son, Li Yang, had neither talent nor knowledge. He went womanizing every day, taking after Li Dong's lustful nature. The younger son, Li An, on the contrary, was intelligent and gifted. At a young age, he was already accomplished in his path to being an official. Tonight, it was Li Yang who had come to Bai Hua Lu, wanting to claim Mudan's first night. At a seat not far from Li Yang's, there was also someone with a drunken gaze. There were liquor stains all over the young man dressed in blue. Behind him was a tall and sturdy manservant, and at his side, a tender and pretty lady was pouring wine for him. He was none other than Jiang Chao, who had already drunk alcohol before coming here. Jiang Chao's gaze was hazy. He pulled the lady pouring wine into his embrace, asking, "I heard that Mudan from your Lu loves talented scholars the most." For the lady to be suddenly pulled into his embrace was an opportunity for her to act bashful. Yet she did not expect Jiang Chao to ask something like this. Nevertheless, the ladies in the brothels knew how to observe changes in expression. Although she was puzzled by his question, having noted Jiang Chao's dressing, she was able to conclude that he looked like someone from an affluent family, so she did not dare to brush him off. She said in a soft tone, "It's not completely true. It is only that more than half of the people Mudan Jiejie selects are scholars." She gave a warm laugh. "And looking at young master's appearance, you must be a genuine scholar, endowed with great talents and very knowledgeable." She had been better off without making additional comments, as once she said those words, Jiang Chao's expression changed. It was as if Lu Min, sitting on a horse of great stature with a leisurely attitude, appeared before his eyes. At once he pushed the lady aside, coldly picking up the wine cup and taking a sip. She did not understand why Jiang Chao suddenly flew into a rage, but only able to curse him with an unlucky sentence in her heart, she gave an apologetic smile and left. At this moment, a clear and melodious voice from upstairs rang out, "Miss Mudan has arrived." Instantaneously, everyone was simmering with excitement. Li Yang, who was fanning himself, heard the announcement and squinted his eyes at the level above to see. They only saw a lady with her face obscured by a veil appear above. She was wearing a small phoenix-style garment in jade green with a Confederate rose floral design and detailing on the collar from the Shu province. It was matched with a long winding skirt made from silk, and her thick lustrous hair was coiled into 2 loop buns that pointed towards the sky. This hairstyle made her look distinguished and unique. A copper hair ornament with a rose-shaped torsion ribbon was inserted into the painstakingly styled, cloud-like hair. She wore agate bracelets on her smooth and soft wrists, and there was a silk knot attached to her waist with a fragrant perfume sachet hanging from it. She had on a pair of embroidered shoes with a connected twin lotus flower design. Her whole look was radiant like spring flowers, in fact even more gorgeous and touching than flowers. As she was covered by the veil, the crowd could not see her looks clearly. However, seeing that gentle and graceful demeanor, they already felt their hearts itch unbearably, and they yearned to rush up there and take off the veil. That lady was magnanimous. She was standing on the second level's small stage, leaning against the pillar when she suddenly laughed softly. That voice was like silver bells, crisp, clear and pleasant to the ears, yet it had a hint of ambition in it. She extended a pair of tender jade-like hands, gently removing her veil, at once revealing that bewitchingly attractive face. To speak the truth, while Mudan's facial features were beautiful, they weren't the national standard of beauty. For example, she definitely could not compare to the Jiangfu's Jiang Susu or Jiang Ruan. However, she was victorious in that exotic style. Her skin was slightly tanned, yet it did not come across as unstylish. Her azure eyes were like sapphire, and when she mildly took a glance around, most of the men present already felt completely hooked. Li Yang mumbled, "This type of natural rare beauty, If obtained, it is inevitable for one to be completely immersed in pleasure. Mudan, I definitely want her. Although Jiang Chao was usually not as lustful as Li Yang, he was still a man after all, and he had drunk some liquor. The alcohol had already taken effect, and Mudan was a rare beauty, therefore, a ball of fire was growing in his heart. Mudan was also an expert. In this capital, every man wanted to trifle with her. Yet in the end, who was toying with whom was still unknown. She gently threw the veil downwards, and immediately, all the men rushed forward like a swarm of bees to snatch it. A young man, who with great physical strength, managed to snatch the veil, put it under his nose and mildly sniffed at it, his gaze revealing infatuation. Li Yang frowned, but Mudan stood upstairs gently smiling and said, "Young masters, Mudan is here. Now the bidding can begin." Her body posture showed boldness and excitement, immediately inciting the people below the stage into a frenzy. Li Yang stared at her fixedly. Such a beauty. I wonder how much pleasure she can give in bed. He signaled the manservant by his side with a wave of his hand, and the manservant promptly went to sign up to be a part of those who were bidding. Li Yang was quite assured because in the capital, in terms of riches and fortunes, the Li family was second to none. His father Li Dong had also done this sort of bidding for a lady in a brothel. Money to them was a small matter, as long as they could own the beauty's heart and body. Although there were many young masters below the stage, most of those who came to the brothel to bid had neither talents nor knowledge, and even if they had a little capability, they were somewhat afraid that the elders in their families would find out. Therefore, the money they used was personally their own, and ultimately they were timid. However, he did not want any secrets or a wife, nor was he scared that his father would find out. Perhaps his father, upon hearing about this, would want to come another day to experience that unrivaled beauty's taste. Li Yang was pleased with himself. The people bidding were competitive at first, but gradually it slowed down because the price was no longer something that normal rich families could afford to pay. Mudan smiled brightly, watching the taels gradually increase. Tael, a former Chinese weight-based monetary unit. At the end, there were only two people still bidding. One of them was Li Yang's manservant, and the other was a tall and muscular man. Li Yang waved his hand to summon the manservant back to his side. Seeing that the price had already reached 3,050 gold, he lazily stretched out 4 fingers and said, 4,050. The tall and muscular man retreated to Jiang Chao's side and in a low voice said, "Young master, that fellow is clearly trying to provoke." Jiang Chao's indignance was hard to contain. Originally he was determined to win Mudan no matter what, and although he was tipsy, deep down he still knew that 4,050 gold was no small sum. He did not have so much silver at all. However, upon hearing Danyo's words about that person provoking him, Lu Min's arrogant and haughty expression with a hint of scorn appeared in Jiang Chao's eyes. He gnashed his teeth and said, 5,050. Once those words were said, the surrounding people were all shocked because before this day, there had been no courtesan with a marked price of 5,050 gold a night. Li Yang snorted. He seriously looked at Jiang Chao, seeing that although Jiang Chao's clothes were not cheap, it could not compare to his own. He was certain that the other party was forcing himself to continue on despite difficulties, therefore he without care, waved his hand and said, 6,050. 7,050. Jiang Chao gritted his teeth. He felt that the other person had changed. He was the current Zhuang Yuanlang who was flushed with success, urging his horse on while parading through the streets like a hero. He only had one thought: continue competing. He must continue on competing with him. 8,050. Li Yang said angrily. 9,050. Jiang Chao smashed a teacup. Li Yang was furious. He could see that this person was intentionally going against him. He said, add another who of valuable jewels. Who? Ancient measuring vessel / 50 liters. Jiang Chao, seeing that he no longer only bid with gold, looked at his small wine cup and suddenly became clear-headed. 9,050 gold was something that he could never pay out. Not only that, once Zhang Quan knew of this matter, he would surely beat him up till he couldn't get out of bed. However, under the public's gaze, must he dejectedly abstain and give up his winning chances? At this moment, his competitive nature was evoked and his actions tended outweighed reason. He raised his head and coincidentally saw Mu Dan's gaze towards him on the second floor. That gaze with a slightly cheery smile, it was like a warm encouragement, and yet a soundless mocking. He felt his heart skip a beat and he said fearlessly 10,050. There was complete silence. Everyone looked at him like he was an idiot, yet Jiang Chao only stared at Li Yang. In his eyes, Li Yang at this moment was like a flustered and exasperated Lu Min, insistently having no means to deal with him. Although Li Yang was someone with a luxurious lifestyle and dressing, he deeply understood the rules of the red light district. Beautiful ladies were wonderful, but 10,050 was too expensive. 10,050 could already buy a few beautiful exotic young ladies with clean bodies. Thinking of all the other prospects, it was really not worth it. He felt extreme anger in his heart, but he still smiled. Since it is already like this, then this young master shall not snatch the person, Miss Mu Dan, though it is a pity. With that, he cupped his hands in farewell and turned around and left. However, he still felt indignant, and once he reached the door, with maliciousness and ruthlessness in his eyes, he ordered the manservant by his side, thoroughly check out that person just now for this young master. Dare to snatch a woman from me. I must surely teach him a lesson so he regrets it forever. After Li Yang left, Mu Dan laughed softly. Young master is willing to spend money freely for Mu Dan. Mu Dan feels touched. I must trouble young master to pass the silver certificate to the mama downstairs to manage, then come to Mu Dan's boudoir to meet in private. Silver certificate. Jiang Chao suddenly reacted, and upon seeing Mu Dan's gentle blue eyes, unknowingly, his body broke out in a cold sweat. Naturally he knew that he did not have enough silver to pay Mu Dan, but in the capital Bai Hualu was not without backing, and if things got out of hand, what would he do? At this moment, the tall and sturdy manservant at his side, Daniel, said, My young master left the house in a rush today and he forgot to bring enough silver. Everyone laughed at those words. He specifically came to buy Mu Dan's first night yet did not bring silver. Wasn't saying this giving everyone something to laugh at and ridicule him for. Mu Dan looked at him with great interest. But Bai Hualu doesn't have the custom of buying on credit. Why doesn't young master go get the money first and then we can have a proper discussion? The words were said with ridicule, and Jiang Chao was seething with rage. He had already had wine, therefore did things without restraint. Seeing Mu Dan's face full of disdain, he immediately jumped up and scolded, You are only a whore working as a prostitute, greedy and easily tempted by money, and you dare to say that you love talented scholars. You're just putting on airs. Slut. Mu Dan's expression changed, and instantly, there were bodyguards with knives and sticks rushing out from all four corners. Mu Dan usually socialized well and had a wide range of connections, dignified officials and people born of noble status who were willing to give her a reputation. These bodyguards were sent by noble people, and were in charge of protecting Mu Dan. Currently, with Jiang Chao tightly surrounded, Mu Dan coldly said, It looks like young master is here to cause trouble, or maybe to use causing trouble as a distraction to repudiate the debt. Bai Hualu punishes those who deny their debts following the traditional custom. She nodded her chin to signal people to go to him. Does young master wish to keep the left hand or the right hand? Jiang Chao panicked and went to rush forward, his foul mouth swearing, I want to kill you, slut. How could the guards allow him to do that? They subdued him on the floor within a few moments. Daniel, seeing the situation, said with alarm, Miss, please show mercy. My Fu's young master was not planning on denying the debt. Miss, please bring people to the capital's Jiang Fu. My young master is the Minister Zhang's second young master. Miss can bring young master's token to collect the taels. The people were again in a wave of discussion. Minister Zhang had clear and upright moral values, yet surprisingly, he gave birth to a son that was on this level of shamelessness. The crowd could not help but think of the rumors regarding Jiang Susu at the Lantern Festival a few days back. They thought in their hearts, it is really true that one may know a person for a long time but not understand his or her true nature. The Jiang Fu, it seems, was not as honorable and upright as they appeared to be. An idea formed in Mu Dan's head. Since it is so, Mama, please bring a few people and make a trip to the Jiang Fu. Everyone present, please be my witness. This young master spent 10,050 on Mu Dan to buy Mu Dan for tonight. When young master Jiang brings the silver, Mu Dan will of course have a long talk throughout the night with young master Jiang. Finished speaking, she could not bear to spare Jiang Chao another glance and left with a brush of her sleeve. In the capital, although Mu Dan was a lady from the brothel, she was associated with wide and numerous influential connections. She knew many high dignitaries and many people still wanted to sell her a reputation. That night, Jiang Ruan closed her books and was prepared to rest, when she faintly heard a crying voice come across from outside. She rubbed her temples. What is this about? Baiji stood up to serve her warm water. I'm not sure, it just happened. Lu Zhu has already gone out to inquire. Just as she said this, Lu Zhu ducked into the room. Seeing Jiang Ruan and Baiji looking at her, she said, "It seems like people from Baihua Lu. And they claim that second young master owes them money. They actually came to the Fu to demand silver." It was hard for Baiji to disguise the despise in her words. Towards a place like Baihua Lu, she had conflicts in her heart. Foreign and master had a very fierce argument. Lu Zhu gave a cunning laugh. Foreign wants to give them money to redeem second young master, however. Master says that there isn't that much money. Then Foreign started crying and argued with master. Jiang Ruan laughed. Foreign really wronged him. Jiang Fu indeed did not have 10,050 gold taels. The Fu looked magnificent and splendid, yet in the end it was only an empty shell. Not to mention a few days ago, in order to bribe Zhao Darren for Jiang Chao's exam, Jiang Fu offered a large sum of money, although in the end he did not reap any benefit, and the money was already spent. Something so big happening in the Fu. How could one as a daughter not have a look? Jiang Ruan stood up. Let us go and see. Lu Zhu and Zhou Momo were sleeping in the room next door, and Jiang Ruan did not wake them up. Lian Qiao and Baiji draped a coat and cloak over her. They had just walked to the courtyard's door when they saw Fu Rong supporting Jiang Dan out. Jiang Dan saw her and jumped out of her skin. She hurriedly saluted her and asked with great caution, "Did Jie also heard about second brother's matter?" Jiang Ruan nodded. "Although I am unsure of what has happened exactly, I must still at least go and observe." "This was what I thought too." Jiang Dan shyly lowered her head. "After all, we are all siblings from the same family." Jiang Ruan looked at her and did not say anything further. Both of them rose and walked towards the main hall. They had just entered the main hall when, as predicted, the first thing they heard was Xia Yan's wailing. Jiang Ruan raised her eyebrows, seeing a few yin-yangs at the scene. Jiang Li was standing with a look of gratification at her misfortune, and Jiang Susu's face was extremely pale. Observing closely, one could see the panic in Jiang Susu's eyes. First Yin Yang was currently carefully advising Xia Yan. "Foreign, do not cry anymore. What should we do if you cry too much and harm your body?" Xia Yan did not bother to look at her. She only tightly grabbed onto Jiang Quan's arm and complained tearfully, "Lei Oi, he is our flesh and blood. Are you really planning on not caring about him anymore?" Jiang Quan pursed his lips and lowered his head and glanced at Xia Yan. Xia Yan's hair strands were slightly messy and the cheeks that were usually brimming with a scholarly spirit were dripping with tears, appearing even more elegant and beautiful. After all, it was his beloved woman. Jiang Quan helped her up with one hand and sighed. "It's not that I do not wish to save him. It is really because the Fu does not have that much money. We can go borrow money." Xia Yan was in a bit of a frenzied state of mind. "Leoi, don't you know many bureaucrats just borrow from them? We do not need to for long. I can later borrow it from my maternal family. Leoi Chower cannot land into their hand. You know what sort of place Baihua Lu is." "Nonsense." Jiang Chao retracted his hand, his gaze hardening and becoming frosty. "Borrow money from bureaucrats? Do you take my Jiang Fu's reputation as something that can be easily trampled on?" "Father, what has happened? What place is Baihua Lu?" Jiang Ruan asked. Only then did the onlookers notice that she and Jiang Dan had come. Jiang Quan furrowed his brows. "What are you doing here?" Baiji and Lian Qiao curled their lips. All the yin-yangs in the Fu had come. Purposely not calling Jiang Ruan and Jiang Dan, this was truly taking them as invisible. Jiang Ruan said, "It is the middle of the night and I heard voices arguing. I was deeply concerned, so I came to take a look. But what has happened?" Her expression of concern did not appear forced, though Jiang Quan stared at her with a complicated emotion in his eyes. Under the lights, Jiang Ruan looked alluring, wearing a satin mantle with a prosperity symbol, enhancing her whole person to be as exquisite as a jade carving. He too, had heard rumors about the happenings at the Lantern Festival a few days ago, and he had suspicions about Zhang Ruan in his heart. The girl before his eyes was tall, slim and graceful, and upon observing carefully, she had a bit of Zhao Mei's appearance from the past, in fine clothes and riding a well-groomed horse. He was absent-minded for a few moments, however. Xia Yan saw Zhang Ruan and her eyes lit up. She threw herself towards Zhang Ruan and said, "Ruan, a mother knows you are the most soft-hearted. You are a kind child. Now something has happened to your second brother. The dowry that Jie left for you. Can you take it out at once to save your brother? In a few days mother will return it to you." Translated by Salve. Chapter 67 Part 2. Chapter 67. A Ceaselessly Lustful Nature Part 2. Xia Yan looked expectantly at Zhang Ruan. Zhang Ruan quietly watched her. Was Xia Yan's brain spoiled to actually beg for help from her? Unfortunately, she slightly smiled. "Mother, what words are these? If I really had money, naturally it would be taken out to save second brother. However, as mother knows, 5 years ago I went to the countryside residence and the evil servants there bullied their master. The dowry my mother left for me has long been snatched away by those immoral servants." She sighed. Ruan Yang truly has the heart to help but no means. Xia Yan loosened her hand, blankly staring at her. Zhang Ruan had a tranquil gaze as she maintained eye contact with her, wondering if Xia Yan at this moment was filled with so much regret that her intestines turned green. After all, it was she who had sent her to the village in the first place. She only had herself to blame for today. In the past, Zhao Mei, in order to marry Jiang Quan, broke off all relations with the Zhao family and therefore had little dowry. However, she was born and raised in that family and had saved some money. Adding to this her old jewelry and valuables, it was at least worth about 1 to 2,000. Xia Yan, in order to maintain her gentle and virtuous facade, never thought of snatching the dowry away. In truth, the items that were taken away at the countryside residence had long been returned when Imperial Censor Wang handled this grievance of hers. It was just that Zhang Ruan had Lian Xiao convert everything to silver certificates, just in case that if one day Xia Yan asked about her dowry, she could righteously refuse. Xia Yan looked as if her whole body had been hollowed out, and her whole person became limp and feeble on the floor, mumbling, "My Chower, is he really at a dead end?" Jiang Su, seeing her in this state, could no longer bear it and ran to her side, and the mother and daughter wailed together. Zhang Li frowned. "Second brother is really causing too much trouble. The Fu truly does not have this much money, moreover, he even enraged father." Second Yang immediately covered Zhang Li's mouth, as she understood that now was not the time to add fuel to the fire. As expected, Jiang Quan glared at Zhang Li harshly. Hong Ying, seeing the situation, walked towards the front. "Furen, since it is already like this, please do not only think of crying. The Fu may not have 10,050 gold, but it should have a few thousand. Why don't you get someone to go retrieve it now and then negotiate with the people from Baihualu? Ask them to let second brother go immediately." On hearing this, Zhang Ruan laughed in her heart and glanced at Hong Ying. Hong Ying was born in a brothel. It was impossible for her to not know the brothel's rules. The more popular a lady was, the higher her price would be, and therefore she wasn't someone just anyone could afford to offend. If someone owed a large sum and was unable to pay it, then he would have to pay back with his life. If he could not fully pay off the debt, there was no buy on credit custom. If the people from Jiangfu went to talk to the people from Baihualu tonight and were only willing to pay a part of the money, it was equivalent to admitting that Jiangfu was unable to bear responsibility for the rest. Then, according to the regulations, Zhang Chao would have to leave a part of his body there. This fifth Yang seemed tender and elegant. She was born in the marketplace, and yet, her methods were even harsher and more vicious than hers. Zhang Quan looked at Xia Yan and her daughter crying themselves hoarse, and his heart softened, finally saying, "Don't cry anymore, Steward Zhang. Go to the storehouse to retrieve the tails and find a few people to make a trip to Baihualu." Xia Yan stopped her wailing and temporarily let out a sigh of relief. Zhang Quan saw Zhang Ruan and others at the side again. "All of you staying here have no purpose. Go back to your courtyards and don't casually walk about." Zhang Dan timidly and hurriedly responded. Zhang Ruan nodded and walked out of the main hall together with Zhang Li, though Zhang Li's courtyard was not in the same direction as Zhang Ruan's. Before leaving, Zhang Ruan said to Zhang Dan, I never thought that second brother would make such a huge mistake. If Zumu found out about this, I don't know how angry she will be. Zhang Dan was stupefied for a moment and Zhang Li's footsteps also paused, then quickly left. Zhang Dan asked, the Jeje's meaning is that Zumu still does not know of this matter. Did you see any trace of Zumu tonight? Zhang Ruan said. Since she was not seen, naturally, she does not know. She slowly walked, with the usual smile on her face. She was not sure if when old Zhang Madam woke up the next morning and found out that half of the Zhang Fu's savings were used to pay the debt for Zhang Chao's impulse, whether she would go crazy with rage. As for Zhang Chao, he was destined to not be able to come back intact. That night, Zhang Ruan slept very soundly, and when she opened her eyes in the morning, there was already sunlight shining into the room. Baiji saw that she was awake and laughed. Miss slept very well yesterday and surprisingly woke up late. Mother did not order me to do the greetings. Being late does not cause any harm. Zhang Ruan chuckled. How would Foreign be in the mood to make Miss do the greetings when she is so busy and can barely cope? Lian Xiao served her warm water and was tending to cleaning Zhang Ruan's face while saying, there is a huge disturbance in Meiqing Yuan. Zhang Ruan accepted the handkerchief. What is the situation now? The little finger of second young master's right hand was cut off, Lian Xiao said. When he came back he was bleeding so much it frightened everyone. Stopping for a moment, she continued on. Now the rumors have started spreading saying that second young master went to buy Hualu and spent money like water, but his pockets were actually empty. Our Fu was unable to take out so much money and only gave 5,050, therefore, the people from Bai Hualu didn't take his life and only chopped off second young master's little finger. Zhang Ruan finished wiping her face and passed the handkerchief back to Lian Xiao. What else? Miss, you really are good at analyzing things, Lian Xiao said. Not sure how old Zhang Madam found out about this, but she is enraged and Foreign and second Miss have both been confined. She herself was so angry that she fainted, and now the physician who had just finished seeing second young master has to do a pulse diagnosis for old Zhang Madam. Third younger sister's actions are fast. A ghost of a smile graced her lips. Has this story already spread in the capital? Naturally. Lu Zhu came inside and on hearing Zhang Ruan's words she casually added, now everyone knows the story of second young master spending money carelessly for a beauty at Bai Hualu last night and in the end, even getting one of his fingers chopped off. Everyone is saying that the Jiang Fu is actually very poor. After speaking the last line, she went to peek at Zhang Ruan's expression with a little embarrassment. However, she saw that Zhang Ruan did not take her words to heart in the slightest and instead asked about other things. How is father now? Master was so angry he could not bear it, and if not for the fact that second young master is lying on the bed unconscious, he would have rushed up and hit him. It looked like something serious happened to him. Zhang Ruan lowered her head to take a sip of the tea handed by Baiji. After last night's ruckus caused by Zhang Chao, the Jiang Fu's dignity was considered to be as good as gone. For someone like Zhang Quan, who placed great importance on reputation, this was a huge blow. After this incident, the Imperial Censor's account book would not leave out any details pertaining to him in the report to the higher authority. This would definitely hinder his official career. Of course, the most important thing was being in conflict with the capital's Li family. With last night's reckless spending, and since Zhang Chao won the title, it was inevitable that he had offended Li Yang. This person, Li Yang, was known to be narrow-minded, so why would he simply leave it at that? Zhang Ruan gazed outside the window. Let it go on this way. Zhang Chao had forcefully occupied the position of the Jiang Fu's D-son for so many years. The public seemed to have forgotten that the Jiang family still had a Jiang Xing. This debt. Let her take it in place of Jiang Xing. Zhang Chao, you're in agony just by this. There is only one step from heaven to hell, but this is just the start. In the study room, Xia Yan looked at Zhang Quan with alarm. Laoi, you cannot confine Chao. Why do you not want him to go to the Imperial Academy anymore? Unfilial son. In a burst of uncontrollable anger, Zhang Quan said, just hear what everyone outside is saying about my Jiang Fu. He learned from others and went to Bai Hualu to spend money like water. My Jiang Fu seems to have raised him all these years for nothing. He failed his imperial examination and all he knows how to do is drink wine every day. What a good son you have raised. Laor, I know that you are furious. Xia Yan knelt down. But Chaoer is young and ignorant and who hasn't had times when they make mistakes. Chaoer is also the son that I've carried for 9 months, however. When he was young he was scolded as a road. Nevertheless, everything Chaoer does is all in the hopes of helping the Zhang family receive glory. This time he failed the imperial examination and felt extremely awful. That's why he made such a huge mistake. And, after all, he has already been punished, hasn't he? Chaoer has already lost a finger. I beg Laoi to pity him. Jiang Quan looked at Xia Yan, who was kneeling down on the floor, and took a deep breath. This was his beloved woman, however. He had made her wait painstakingly for a few years before she became his main wife. When Jiang Chao was born, he already had the status of an illegitimate child, and no matter how he tried to make amends, it would still be in vain. Xia Yan said again, Laoi, could it be that you don't want your only son anymore? Jiang Quan's heart jumped repeatedly. Zhang Xianji's life and death had been unknown for a long time, for at least 5 years, and he took it as if he never had that son. What Xia Yan said was not wrong. Jiang Chao was his only son now. He sat in front of the study table, his tone despondent. I am doing this for Chaoer's own good. Yesterday's event caused him and the young master of Grand Counselor Li's Fu to have bad blood. If he does not hide until it blows over, I fear that Li Yong would not easily let him off. Xia Yan was dumbfounded for a second. Grand Counselor Li and Li Yong, who are they? How did Chaoer get into a disagreement with them? Jiang Quan sighed and told all the ins and outs of the incident to Xia Yan. Even so, there was one thing he didn't tell Xia Yan. Li Dong belonged to 8th Prince's faction and currently he JQ wanted to ingratiate himself with 8th Prince. However, he had offended Li Dong for no reason, and if Li Dong decided to purposely hinder him, then in the future 8th Prince, this big tree, would not tolerate him. Xia Yan, on hearing Jiang Quan's words, said in a low voice, Laoi, since you have said this, you do not wish to have a hostile relationship with the Li family. Having connections to the Li family is beneficial for the Zhang family. Jiang Quan shook his head. I originally wanted to find a chance to build a connection with them, however. I did not expect Chaoer to do this and instead cause resentment. Xia Yan remained silent for a while. Just then, a thought appeared in her mind. She said, Laoi, do you know which type of relationship is the steadiest? Jiang Quan looked at her. Xia Yan said, what if we manage to have a marriage alliance with the Li family? Lear does things too openly and Danner is too young. Jiang Quan knitted his brows. Don't let your imagination run wild. Xia Yan shook her head. Lear and Danner are both Shu daughters after all, and their status do not match, therefore, they cannot be the official wife. Don't tell me you are thinking of Sewer? Jiang Quan frowned. What type of place is that Li family that there is even a matter of the father and son associating with the same woman? Even if I want to please the Li family, I will still not send Sewer into that abyss of suffering. What is Laoi talking about? Xia Yan took a few steps towards Jiang Quan. Nestling against him, and a pair of jade-like hands gently massaged his shoulders. Sewer is my flesh and blood too. Why would I think of her? What I mean is Ruaner. She looked at Jiang Quan's stupefied expression before continuing. Ruaner's personality is stable and reliable, although I am worried, but the Li family still has a younger son and that son is smart and capable. If he takes a fancy to Ruaner, his status matches with hers, and isn't that a good chance to form a connection? This way we can apologize and that Li Dong will not make things difficult for us anymore. Hearing those words, Jiang Quan was enlightened. I actually forgot about Lian. What you said is not wrong. Lian's prospects for success is immeasurable. If Ruaner marries him, Jiang Fu will also have an additional helping hand. However, he hesitated. This marriage is so beneficial, but you do not think so for Sewer. Ruaner has led a bitter life, Xia Yan said gently. Sewer at least has me to worry for her, but Ruaner is a child without a mother. They are all Jiang Fu's daughters. Will I purposely harm her? Not to mention, I still wish to keep Sewer by my side for a few more years, therefore, there is no need to rush her marriage and we can slowly pick. Jiang Quan looked at Xia Yan's smile and his attitude became warm. He embraced her and said, I know you are a person who takes everything into consideration. Marrying you in this lifetime is my fortune. Rest assured, I will definitely find Sewer a good marriage and will never let her suffer in this lifetime. Xia Yan faked a smile in return and the two of them chatted for a while. Then Jiang Quan said, since it is like this, I will invite the Li family over to the Fu soon. Xia Yan beamed. Then I shall not disturb Leo anymore. I'll go check on Chao. Then she walked up to the door and her smile instantly disappeared as she left. She walked through the corridors towards the courtyard where Cui Yu was looking after Chao. Upon seeing her enter, she hurriedly retreated to the side. Jiang Chao was lying motionless on the bed. Xia Yan sat down beside him and took his hands, which were covered in white bandage, and pressed them to her lips, gently saying, Chao, rest assured. Mother will take revenge for you. Lin Lang, who stood at the side, asked Furin, You really want to matchmake eldest miss and second young master Li? How could it be? Xia Yan's smile was ruthless. I want her in this lifetime to only be able to be a small concubine by Li Yang's side. As for the official wife, she better not think about it. I want her to be ruined and only be able to be a play toy for the Li family's father and son. I want her to marry into the Li family and suffer for a lifetime. Lin Lang could not help but shiver with fear. Then she heard Xia Yan laugh lightly. Second young master Li's official wife? Dream on. The issue regarding the capitals by Hualu was spread like wildfire. Within a night it seemed like it was spread through all the streets and alleys. These few days the Jiang family became the capital's hot topic, but it was all about ridiculing them. At Jining Wang's Fu, a young man wearing a black cloak with rainflower designs and an embroidered crane on it stood at the window. The attire complemented his look, making him appear even more tall and studious. A snow-white pigeon flew from outside the window and landed on his palm. He retrieved a slip of paper attached to its legs through a red string. The pigeon's red bean-like eyes looked at him and he stretched out the tip of his finger and stroked the pigeon's head. The pigeon chirped once joyfully before flapping its wings and flying into the sky. Xiao Xiao opened the slip of paper to read it before gently furrowing his eyebrows and knocking on the table. Suddenly, two people dressed completely in black appeared from inside the house. Master, one of them starting speaking first, we have checked it out. This subordinate followed the Imperial Academy's page boy. The letter came from the capital's Zhongquan's Fu. The sender is Zhang Fu's eldest young lady servant. However, we did not manage to check whether the two have any connection. I understand you're dismissed, Xiao Xiao said indifferently. The silence resumed inside the house. Yifeng stood behind Xiao Xiao and after thinking for a while said, Before, the rumors were also spread from this eldest Zhang Mississippi master. This eldest Zhang Miss has a suspicious identity. She isn't our enemy, Xiao Xiao said. When he first investigated that it was Zhang Ruan, he was astonished too. Those who knew the question to the final imperial examination were usually only the emperor's people. Zhang Ruan was a young lady who stayed in her boudoir, and no matter what, it was impossible that she was an enemy agent from the palace. However, she had many unfathomable things about her. For example, last time at Assistant Minister Shen's Fu, she actually knew of their most hidden secret. He had 300,000 genie imperial guards under him, and he never had any information that he couldn't find out about. However, towards this eldest Zhang Miss who appeared out of nowhere, he couldn't find any suspicious points. It was as if she was supposed to know those secrets. He heard about yesterday's event that took place in Bai Hualu as well. Recently, the Zhang Fu continuously being in trouble seemed to all have started since the day this eldest Zhang Miss returned to the Fu. Facts were proved when one of his genie guards found the manservant following Zhang Chao at Bai Hualu. He admitted that he took someone's money and purposely tempted Zhang Chao to go forward. The last spearhead pointed towards Zhang Ruan. He couldn't help but crease his eyebrows. There is something wrong with this matter. Continue to investigate, see how she is connected to eighth brother. If she was indeed Xian Li's chess piece, she would be treated differently. Yifeng thought about it then said, What about that second Zhang Miss? A few days ago she came again and Steward Lin chased her away. There's no need to be concerned about it, Xiao Xiao said indifferently. Yifeng shrugged his shoulders and stopped talking. When Li Dong, who was at home, received Zhang Quan's invitation, he also shook his head and said, That's strange, what does Zhang Quan want? Usually we have no relation, yet he suddenly issued an invitation, what's the purpose? Li Dong's belly was protruding. The beautiful woman by his side was feeding him grapes while saying, Maybe he wishes to build a connection with Leo. Li Yang's lustful eyes were sizing up Li Dong's latest woman, and on hearing these words he said, It's not going to work. Yesterday it was Zhang Chao who made me lose face. I must definitely find a chance to settle scores with him. That is enough, Li Dong said. Your younger brother is returning to the capital in a few days. Don't create trouble for him. Who is that Zhang Chao, to be worthy of you to bear grudges? Li Yang was about to say something more, when the beautiful woman giggled. Nu does not know who Zhang Chao is, but before Nu entered the Fu, Nu has heard that the Zhang family has 2 daughters and both are unrivaled beauties. Nu, slave. Upon hearing this, Li Yang's eyes immediately lit up. What you said, is it true? It is naturally true. Nu does not dare to lie to young master. That beautiful woman smiled. Eldest Zhang Miss is extremely charming and alluring. Second Zhang Miss is beautiful and elegant. Both also possess talents that are unmatched. This is a fact that everyone in the capital knows. Come to think of it, eldest young master usually does not bother with rich young ladies, so you must not have known. I never thought that Zhang Chao would have this sort of 2 younger sisters. I wished to have a look at their graceful demeanors. A spark of interest lit up Li Yang's eyes. Father, when is Zhang Quan's invitation for? It is tomorrow. Li Dong looked at his son's gaze and was well aware of it. Why do you wish to go to the Jiangfu too? This type of beauty, I definitely want to have a glimpse of their elegance. To see whether the people in the capital are lying. Li Yang's laugh was somewhat vulgar. Zhang Chao caused me to lose Mu Dan. If his 2 sisters are pretty enough, I will not settle scores with him. You better make your intentions clear, Li Dong said. The reputation of the Zhang misses is not something you can toy with as you wish. I see that you're not young anymore, you should be getting married already. Just in time tomorrow when you go to the Jiangfu, and if you see anyone you fancy, just marry her into the family. I still do not wish to marry. Li Yang's face fell, and after thinking for a while, he asked the beautiful woman again, how is the relationship between these Jiangfu's 2 daughters? Eldest Zhang Miss recently returned to the capital, therefore, she's not familiar with certain things, but I heard from others that she has her own demeanor of doing things. She seems gentle and unrestrained. That woman smiled. Second Zhang Miss is naive and romantic, and she is also unworldly. Everyone in the capital knows about this. In terms of temperament, both of them are not too bad. Zhang Chao licked his lips. If I really want to marry, I might as well marry more than one. It is also a wonderful thing. Translated by Salve. Chapter 68 Part 1. Chapter 68. To reap what one has sown. Part 1. The next morning, Zhang Ruan rose up very early and ate the green rice congee that Bai Ji had brought. When Lian Xiao noticed Xu Xiang at the door peering inside the room, she asked, "What's the matter?" Biging rice is a kind of high-quality rice. Its origin is in Yutian County, Hebei Province. It is a tribute in the Qing dynasty. It has the characteristics of slender grain, slightly greenish, and is fragrant when cooking. Aka japonica rice, sometimes called Sinica rice, is one of the 2 major domestic varieties of Asian rice. Just now Nu came across second Miss. Xu Xiang smiled. She received several bolts of satin and invited eldest Miss to come visit her courtyard and pick out 2 bolt. I see, go and return to your work now, Lian Xiao told her. After Xu Xiang left, Lian Xiao told Zhang Ruan the whole story. At last she asked, second Miss is really strange. Now that second young master is still laid up in bed, she has such a mind to invite young Miss out. Thus I'm afraid that we have to be prepared, Zhang Ruan said lightly, fiddling with the embroidery in front of her. Lu Zhu, go ask around to see if anyone else is coming today. Jiang Susu wouldn't invite her over without any reason, especially at this very moment. Since the pit was clearly meant for her, it was better to calmly deal with it. Lu Zhu returned after a short time. Miss, this maidservant asked others in the courtyard. Today, the capital's Grand Counselor Li is coming for a visit. She watched Zhang Ruan's expression with unease. This maidservant feels that it is strange. Do you want to decline it, miss? There is no need, Zhang Ruan replied before Lu Zhu could finish speaking. She looked at Zhang Ruan in astonishment, only to see Zhang Ruan's smile with her alluring eyes narrowed slightly. Such an old friend. I have long wanted to pay him a visit. She spoke in a cheerful tone, but somehow Lu Zhu felt cold all over. She took another look at Zhang Ruan's bottomless eyes, but they were fuzzy like looking at flowers in the fog. After a pause, Lu Zhu asked, "In that case, would you like to freshen up, miss?" "Naturally." Jiang Ruan smiled. "Lian Xiao Baiji, you two stay in the courtyard to embroider on my behalf. Call Xu Xiang in." In Yanhua Yuan, Jiang Susu was dressing up meticulously. Last night, she learned from Hu Dai about Xia Yan being a matchmaker for Jiang Ruan. She didn't understand why Xia Yan would introduce such a good marriage to Jiang Ruan. Grand Counselor Li was considered to be an important minister in the imperial court, while Lian was a young talent. She thought that if Jiang Ruan could marry into the Li family with ease while her own reputation was ruined, what kind of life she would have in her future husband's family. Jiang Susu's heart was filled with resentment. Today, she was determined to wear her best attire. She had never met the legendary second young master of the Li family. If she could make him fall for her instead, thus destroying Jiang Ruan's marriage, she would be extremely thrilled. While tying Jiang Susu's hair into a knot, Hu Dai said, "Miss, you'd better not go out. Foreign gave an order for you to stay in the house today. If something goes wrong." "Who let you speak like this to your mistress?" Jiang Susu was impatient. "I know my own business. I will send you away if you speak out of turn again." Hu Dai's hand stilled and she spoke no more. Li Dong and his son had arrived at the Jiangfu, and were currently inside the main hall talking to Jiang Quan. Xia Yan also came out to greet them. Li Dong's eyes roamed all over Xia Yan in an intimate fashion while speaking in an ambiguous tone. Minister Jiang is fortunate in his love affairs, having such a lovely wife. Xia Yan was startled and forced herself to smile in reply. Jiang Quan was furious, but Li Dong was known as a dissolute man. Unfortunately, he had no other alternative. While enduring his anger, he welcomed them. "I'm taking the liberty of inviting you today. It's a pity that we have never gotten together after being colleagues for so many years." "All right." Li Dong leaned back. The small eyes on his meaty face narrowed ferociously. "An honest man does nothing underhanded. Perhaps Minister Jiang has something to discuss today. What is it about, I wonder?" Jiang Quan didn't expect that the other party was truly obstinate and would speak in such an ill manner. He had a high self-constraint, but he had never met such a person. As he must not offend him, he couldn't spit out his frustration and was unable to speak for a moment. Xia Yan saw this situation and promptly stepped forward to mediate with a smile. "It's not for a special thing, actually. We've heard that both the young masters in Minister Li's Fu are handsome as well as talented. Our Fu's daughter is no longer young. We'd like to arrange her marriage, and so felt it important to let them see each other." Jiang Quan couldn't help but look at Xia Yan when she spoke so bluntly. It was uncomfortable for him to believe that this woman, who had always been as lofty as a lotus flower, would say such shameless words now. He was somewhat uneasy. As soon as Li Yang, sitting on one side bored stiff, heard this, he grinned. "Foreign, so you want to pick a match for your Fu's young lady?" Since Xia Yan had already spoken out, Jiang Quan was resigned to the fact that the Jiangfu had no face in front of the Li family. He simply clammed up and refused to talk. Xia Yan shot a glance at him and smiled. "Exactly." Li Yang followed with a smile. "I wonder which one of us foreign prefers, me or my second brother." Second young master Li is a young talent, while eldest young master Li has a stately look. Of course both are a good choice. Xia Yan smiled and pulled a lock of loose hair behind her ears. "But now that eldest young master Li is here, it's predestined to be with eldest young master." Li Dong stared at Xia Yan closely. "Foreign, you were born with a gilded tongue. You can speak so well. I wonder if the young lady looks as beautiful as a flower like you?" Xia Yan turned stiff upon hearing the flirting underlying his speech. It was the last straw for Jiang Quan. Just when he was about to lash out in anger, suddenly a delicate female voice rang out. "Mother!" Li Yang's eyes immediately brightened. He turned to see a beautiful girl standing at the door. Her goose egg-shaped face was rosy. She wore a V-neck silk sleeve shirt with yellow camellia pattern interwoven with golden branches, a floor-length pale white moonlight pleated skirt, with different colors on each pleat, draped in primrose jacquard, and jade brocade with patterns of plums, bamboos, and chrysanthemums. Her black hair was elegantly styled in a loose bottle-gourd bun. A delicate silk bat flower ornament was inserted into her beautiful cloud-like hair. Her lily-white wrist was adorned with a coral bracelet, while a wavy half-moon sash was tied on her waist with a pouch of scattered flowers motif hanging upon it. She looked like a fairy, unrivaled in her beauty. She lowered her head shyly as if having just seen a stranger in the hall. After mulling over it a bit, she stepped inside. Her fair-complexioned little face was suffused with a red glow at the moment. Walking closer, a cinnabar-like red mole was visible below those limpid eyes. She truly looked like a goddess descending into the world. Father, mother, she paused. Su'er didn't know that we have guessed. Since the moment Xia Yin saw Jiang Su, her body was rooted in place. She turned to look at the Li father and son lifelessly. As expected, their mercenary gazes fell on Jiang Su. Seeing those hungry wolf-like eyes, Xia Yin couldn't help but shiver. She decided on the spot to rebuke her. Who taught you such manners? Go back to your room. Her tone was too harsh, making Jiang Su frightened. Her eyes were brimming with tears while looking at Li Yang in a daze. When he was stared at by those eyes, he felt that half of his soul was lost. He immediately spoke out. Miss Jiang didn't mean it, so why should foreign punish her? My father and I are not strangers. He spoke in a presumptuous manner. Therefore, on hearing his words, Xia Yin became very anxious. Jiang Su frowned, only to hear Li Dong say, she's just a child. Don't worry too much, foreign. Jiang Su sensed perceptively that something was wrong. She took another look at Jiang Quan and Xia Yan's expressions and felt timid. All right, Su'er will leave first. As soon as she finished speaking, she ran away in a hurry, ignoring those people's expressions. Only when Jiang Su's figure left their view, did Li Yang withdraw his gaze. That must be the Jiangfu's second young lady. Sure enough, she looks more beautiful than the rumors. Su'er is still young. Jiang Quan blocked him. We haven't thought about her betrothal for the time being. I am talking about Ruaner. Xia Yin quickly chimed in. Exactly. Su'er is naughty. In fact, Ruaner has the best temperament and looks. Li Dong and his son looked at each other. Li Yang then remarked, there is no hurry. I see that second Jiang Miss is indeed a rare beauty. Xia Yin was extremely anxious. After saying a few words absent-mindedly to the Li father and son, they had lunch. Warmed with the wine, Jiang Quan and Li Dong talked about some imperial court matters. Li Yang and Xia Yin both withdrew from the room. Li Yang proposed to stroll around in the garden. Although it was not in line with the rules, it was their family who had the most power, so she acquiesced. Xia Yin called Lin Lang, go find Xu Xiang and bring Jiang Ruan out. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes. For my Su'er, I'll let you suffer this lifetime grievance. Jiang Ruan was dressed in a brand new long one-piece brocade robe, etched with yellow camellia flowers with people lapels. Lu Zhu covered her with a scarlet floral jade brocade cloak. Her hair was casually arranged in a tassel bun. Even a thin silver hairpin with inlaid jasmine flowers was worn. A little powder was applied, making her skin look bright. Xu Xiang told her with a smile, Miss is really beautiful, just like a fairy. A fairy? Jiang Ruan smiled gently. I'm definitely not from the heavens. She was an evil spirit coming back from hell. All she had to do was destroy the fairy in front of everyone's eyes. How could she be a fairy? Xu Xiang didn't understand her words, but Lu Zhu spoke. Miss is dressed too grandly. Are there any distinguished guests coming today? Because second Miss is just resting in her courtyard. Shug Xiang's heart beat faster. She looked up furtively at Jiang Ruan's expression. However, Jiang Ruan looked normal. It's just that the weather is very good today, and the mood is lively. There are no distinguished guests in the Fu. Even if there are guests, they wouldn't be in a young lady's courtyard. Xu Xiang lowered her head a bit deeper. However, she felt some uneasiness in her heart. Jiang Ruan looked at her and continued with a smile. Neither I nor Lu Zhu has ever been to Su Exanyon Jiang Su's courtyard. You should know it well since you are usually running errands outside. Jiang Fu was neither too big nor too small. Since returning to the Fu, Jiang Ruan had never been to Jiang Su's courtyard. However, Xu Xiang didn't know what Jiang Ruan's words meant. She was trying to remain calm so that Jiang Ruan wouldn't have any doubt. After a pause, Xu Xiang replied, This maidservant has been there once or twice and will likely remember the way. Jian Ruan smiled. Then I'd like you to lead the way. Xu Xiang suppressed the strange feeling in her heart and made a curtsy. Please follow me, Mississippi. Xu Xiang led the way while Zhang Ruan and Lu Zhu followed behind. Lu Zhu stayed close to Zhang Ruan's side while staring vigilantly at Xu Xiang's back. On the other hand, Zhang Ruan's demeanor was perfectly calm and her smile was tranquil. When they arrived at the gate of Su Xian Yuan, Xu Xiang stopped. This is Su Xian Yuan. Zhang Ruan's gaze swept across the courtyard's gate. Even without entering the room, she could feel the difference from her own residence. Not only was Su Xian Yuan spacious, but the stones were also meticulously arranged in all parts of the garden. At a glance it was very refined and tasteful. Jiang Quan was really favoring one and discriminating against another. Compared with Jiang Susu's Su Xian Yuan, Ruanju was not even as good as a servant's room. Zhang Ruan followed Xu Xiang to a room in Jiang Susu's courtyard. She pushed the door and saw that it was a small room. There was a teapot and several teacups on the small table. Hu Dai stood in place and apologized. Miss just went out and hasn't come back. Please wait a moment, eldest young lady. Maidservants will go to rush her back. There's no harm, you can go. Zhang Ruan smiled politely. Xu Xiang, Lu Zhu, you don't have to stay here. Go follow Hu Dai to find second younger sister. Xu Xiang was stunned. She looked doubtfully at Zhang Ruan, who spoke with a smile. Are you afraid that I'll run away? Don't worry. I'll stay here. Xu Xiang's heart quivered. For some reason, she always had some inexplicable fear in front of eldest young lady. A mere glance from those beautiful eyes made her feel as if all her thoughts were as plain as daylight. It was extremely uncomfortable. Lu Zhu cast a worried look at Zhang Ruan. Then the two of them withdrew. After the three maidservants left, Zhang Ruan stood up. Her smile disappeared and she gently pushed the door open. Su Xian Yuan was extremely quiet. There was no one inside. She held the vermilion pillar in front of the room door with a faint smile. Unexpectedly, Xia Yan had sent all the people in Su Xian Yuan away. Did she truly want her to be in an extremely painful situation and unable to survive? Unfortunately, it was enough for her to taste despair and helplessness once. With a cold smile, she turned and walked into another room. A moment later, she heard disordered footsteps outside. The footsteps were feeble, the sound of a drunkard staggering in. Zhang Ruan opened the door and stood still. Li Yang had drunk some strong wine. He happened to see a good-looking maidservant while strolling in the garden. He wanted to get closer and cuddle up. He didn't expect the girl to break free and lead him all the way here. When he was in front of the courtyard, the maidservant disappeared again. He drank until he was a little drowsy and could only vaguely see the scenery in front of him. He saw the refined and elegant layout of the small courtyard with Su Xian Yuan written on the top. His heart swayed, forgetting where he was. He only knew that it was a young lady's bedroom. Suddenly, his lips curved into a smile and he staggered forward. But at this time, Li Yang saw a young girl in red standing at the door. Her slim stature stood ramrod straight. Her face was not clearly visible, but he could tell instinctively that she was an unrivaled beauty. At present, Li Yang could not care about anything. He shouted, "Little beauty!" The girl in red turned around and went into the room. Li Yang's heart was fluttering. He immediately followed her, calling out, "Don't run away, beauty." Translated by Mazu. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.